We open on a scene of the Demon Lord's defeat, and at last, the world can have its peace once more. The hero in spandex and a lucha mask looks over the cliff triumphantly, knowing he has finally completed his goal, but now there is one more thing he needs to do. He looks over at the princess, and as their eyes lock, he goes begone thought and drop kicks her across the face. This turns out to be a game, and our MC has been wanting to do that ever since he got the first find 1,000 fragments across the map mission from her. She had it coming. In this world, VR technology has greatly improved, immersing people in games like never before. But with new graphic technology, there also comes the games that instead of actual gameplay or features, have fancy rain rendering. The games that have come to be known collectively as trash. But there are still those that are drawn to these dumpster fires of games and seek them out only to laugh at how garbage they are. Rakuro Hizutame is one such person with that kind of gaming addiction. Aside from that though, he is still your average second-year high schooler and has to head into school after spending the entire night gaming. While he walks through the halls, we see this girl building up the courage to talk to him, and she's finally ready to ask him to hang out. However, she gets her chance interrupted after Rakuro's friends come up to him and ask him about the game he was playing that night. After school, we see this woman, Mana Iwamaki, putting up a poster to bring in customers when the girl with a crush on Rakuro walks in and greets her. Mana can tell that she is looking for Rakuro, since he usually stops by here to pick up his latest trash game, but he isn't here right now. Last time she saw him, he had just picked up the Feria Chronicles and was planning to put everything he has got into beating it. The game is called Trash because Feria, who is supposed to be your AI assistant, is of no use at all, and the game has the difficulty of Dark Souls on steroids with bugs on par with Cyberpunk's first release. Just then, Rakuro walks in, and as soon as Rei sees him, she disappears into the back. Mana greets him and asked how Feria Chronicles went, and it was absolute trash, just like he expected. But the worst part by far was Feria herself. She would cause literally all the problems in the game, including murdering random villagers by accident. Then she would blame the whole thing on the Demon Lord, even though it was all because of her. And worse yet, she is highly allergic to accountability. So if you even try to insinuate that she is at fault, she will get mad at you and stop you from progressing the game. Even Aqua was more useful than this. That would be enough to make almost anyone quit the game, but there was one thing that kept him going through it all. Once you actually defeat the Demon Lord, there's a brief 3-minute window where you are allowed to do whatever you want, and as we've already seen, Rakuro knew exactly what he wanted to do to Feria. Now that he's done with that mess, he has to see what he wants to play next, so Mana suggests he plays a game that is actually good this time. Shangri-La Frontier, but he's played so many trash games that he doesn't know what to expect from a good one. He logs in for the first time and sees a menu asking him to create his character, and he is amazed by such a simple feature, because he became so used to games that had no customization options. He takes a grip on himself and finally gets into creating his character, and this is what he ends up with. Rakuro's playstyle involves ignoring all armor in favor of the strongest weapon possible. After all, who needs armor just don't get hit. However, as this is virtual reality and his face is still going to be displayed, he opts to wear this bird mask to hide his identity and preserve some of his dignity. He also selects his class as a wanderer because it comes with a sweet luck boost and loads up the game and finds himself in a wooded forest. He is amazed that he can actually move like he normally would in real life, and that the controls of the game are so realistic, as well as the surrounding area's design. He opens his map to find out where he is and locates the starting village quite a distance away. Normally, new players would spawn in the starting village, but since he selected the Wanderer class, he starts out in a random spot on the beginner map. He starts walking over to the village while also checking out his stats, where he finds that his vitality is only at 3 due to his choice to not wear armor or clothes. As he walks, he notices something behind him and gets attacked by a goblin charging from a tree. He's able to dodge it in time and pulls out his blades to fight it, and as it swings at him, he sidesteps and one-shots it. The goblin drops its axe and gives Rakuro enough experience to level him up to level 2. He doesn't have much time to rest though, as a killer bunny attacks him soon after. He dodges the bunny's attack and causes it to go flying into a tree, destroying it in the process. He can tell that one hit from that knife would be the end of him, so as the bunny attacks again, he blocks and counterattacks. However, the bunny is a bit tougher than the goblin and won't go down to one critical hit, so as it comes in for another strike, he parries it and stabs it again, finally killing it. The bunny gave him enough points to go from level 2 to level 4 instantly, and he also acquired a skill which gives him a bonus every time he blocks an attack. He also realizes that this entire time he has been playing, he hasn't come across any bugs in the code at all, so he can have as much fun as he wants, so he's going to keep hunting for those killer bunnies until they drop their knives since he thinks they are cool. Sometime later, and after some major grinding, Rakuro has reached level 12 and has gotten 2 of those killer bunny knives. Those bunnies are pretty rare on their own, but he had to kill 50 of them to get these 2 knives. Considering he has gotten everything that he wanted from this area, he wants to move on to the second village, Secondale. But to do that, he must cross this bridge guarded by the area boss Snake. The game recommends a party of 3 take on the challenge, but with Rakuro's skill, he can handle this one alone. When Rei first heard that Rakuro would be playing Shangri-La Frontier, she decided to go to the starter village since all new players would usually head there first. She has apparently been playing the game for a while and is at a really high level, so the players in the first village are pretty scared of her. She searches through the people there looking for Rakuro's name since he always uses the same name for every game he plays. But when she doesn't see Rakuro's name there, she logs out thinking she must have just missed him in the crowd. Meanwhile, Rakuro is squaring up to fight the area boss to move on to the second village. He activates a skill that gives him a boost to his evasion so he can learn the attack patterns of the snake. The snake is meant to be a beginner boss, so its attack patterns are really simple to learn and it can easily be dodged. But when it comes to attacking, Rakuro's regular knives are not going to cut it because their durability is too low. So he decides this is as good a time as any to try out the killer bunny knives he got in the forest. As the snake strikes again, he leaps up into the air and prepares to attack once more. But in his overconfidence, he missed one part of the snake's attack pattern and gets sprayed with poison from the snake's tail. The poison causes 1 HP loss every 10 seconds, so he is now on a timer to defeat it before he dies to it. He needs to find a more reliable means to land critical hits on this thing, since it is still covered in scales and has great defense, so he comes up with the idea of creating a wound in the scales and then attacking the same spot repeatedly to get critical hits, but he doesn't know how much health this thing has or how much damage he is doing to it, so he is just shooting blind here. The snake smacks him upwards and heals its wound, making Rakuro realize that he had gotten cocky because of how good he was at all the terrible games that he has been playing. He had thought this game is just for casual gamers, so it should be easy. But as he falls into the snake's mouth, he refuses to give up and keeps himself from being eaten and counters with a stab to the eye, which proves to be enough to defeat it. He gets leveled up to level 14 from the victory, but realizes that he is still poisoned and doesn't have much time before he dies. He dumps all his newly acquired stat points into agility and stamina so he can run to the next village and buy an antidote, but he doesn't know where the shop would be located, so he's just going to have to wing it. In the second village, there is a guy called Reiji who finally convinced his crush to start playing the game with him, and he is playing the role of the advice-giving veteran. They are going out to find her a pet in-game, but before they can go, they see Rakuro running straight towards them, and Mai is freaked out by him. She thinks he is a bird monster on account of his mask, but Reiji recognizes that Rakuro is a player and must have gotten poisoned by the snake and is about to die. He advised him to go straight to the inn and get in a bed to set his respawn point there, which Rakuro is really thankful for. Mai also found it really cool how Reiji knew exactly what to say to help that guy, so Reiji is also grateful to Rakuro for being his accidental wingman. Rakuro makes his way into the inn and gets a room after skipping all the dialogue from the clerk. He jumps into bed and saves his respawn point just before he dies to the poison. Later, Rakuro respawns in the second village and is walking through town looking for places to buy his essentials, but the people around him think he is a little weird for not putting on any kind of armor, so he goes to an armory to buy some light armor. After that, he heads to the weapons shop and tries selling the goblin axe, but it isn't worth anything, so he asks to see the weapons that the blacksmith has on sale. Nothing there is really any better than the knives he got from the bunnies, and the blacksmith explains that that is to be expected since those knives are pretty rare or come across. If he wants anything better, then he would have to order one. Rakuro didn't know he could have the blacksmith make weapons for him, so the blacksmith confirms, adding that he would need to bring in the materials for it though. Rakuro heads out to find some of the materials required from the dire marsh wastes where ores can be mined, but he isn't getting lucky with his drops at all. The ore drops here are what he needs to get a weapon made, but in 30 minutes of mining, he was only able to get 2 gray ore while he needs 5 or 6 of them. Just then, a mud frog appears behind him, but isn't a hostile creature, so it won't be a problem to just leave it alone, but then the frog sprays mud on him and it just became personal. He tosses his pickaxe at the frog and knocks it over before making his way over to finish it off. Very, very slowly, he finally gets to the frog and kills it to let off some steam, and after that, it's back to mining for him. Over time, more and more players are going to need to get the ores from this place, and once that happens, there's going to be a lot of competition, so the best time to collect the ores is right now. After a lot of mining, he has finally gotten all the ores he needs and even finds one really special one which can be used for a rare set of daggers. The blacksmith tells him that he can come back with more ores later to raise the weapon's level to make it stronger. Rakuro appreciates the information and is impressed with how natural the NPC's dialogue is, but while he is still thinking to himself, the blacksmith tells him he should probably hurry home since it's getting dark, and to make sure not to leave the village at night because nocturnal monsters are incredibly powerful and aggressive. Rakuro listens to his advice and then does the exact opposite as he goes out at night to hunt some monsters. Meanwhile, Rei has checked the entirety of the beginner village for Rakuro and hasn't found him, so she concludes that he must have made his way to the second village after defeating the boss, all without ever going to the first village, which is basically impossible for any normal player. But for him, it is pretty reasonable. Rakuro is currently engaged in battle with a red-capped goblin that is unreasonably strong for a goblin. He is struggling to beat it because of its speed and smart fighting tactics, and to make it all worse, it then calls him back up to jump Rakuro, and he doesn't know if he can make it out alive of this one. However, that's exactly the kind of high-stakes adrenaline rush that he loves, and he is all in for the battle. But then he encounters something he could never have prepared for, a unique monster wolf. Elsewhere in the game, Rei has come across Reiji and Mai who saw Rakuro when he first arrived at the second village. She has finally gotten a lead on where he might be, so she asks them where he went and what he looked like. Reiji explains that he came running into the second village after he got poisoned by the snake and was wearing no clothes and a bird mask on his head. With that information, she plans to continue her search, but before leaving, she gives them a teleporter as a token of her appreciation and speeds off. Mai asks who the scary-looking night girl was, but he isn't sure. What he does know, however, is that the emblem on her back belongs to a guild that is focused on the unique monster, Lekagan, the Night Slayer. Unique monsters are special classes of monsters that exist within the game. Normal monsters respawn after a set amount of time, but there is only one unique monster each type in the world. They are called Colossi, and there are supposedly 7 of them across the entire game world, and many of the top guilds have made their goal hunting down these unique monsters, but no one actually knows the conditions for getting one to spawn. So basically, they are extremely rare monsters, and are also ridiculously strong as well. This game has been running for over a year now, but even with a player base of over 30 million, not one player has actually managed to defeat one of them. That is the same unique monster that Rakuro is currently facing. He was already struggling with the goblins, but that thing blew them away in seconds, and now he has to face him. The wolf lunges at Rakuro, but he manages to pull off a perfect parry which allows the user to block all damage from a strike with the right timing. He gets flung backwards and laughs in the face of the monster, but internally, he is quaking in his boots because if he hadn't learnt perfect parry, he would have definitely been dead by now. The wolf attacks again, and Rakuro realizes that he'll be dead if he is even a second late in his movements. He decides to go all in and activates all the useful skills he has got to deliver a critical hit to the monster's paw. It slashes at him again, but he is able to dodge and deliver another critical hit. But then the moon fades behind the clouds and the wolf disappears. Rakuro is left confused as to where the wolf went, but then it appears behind him and tries to strike him again. The fight continues, and as the moon is covered again, the wolf disappears and sneak attacks Rakuro, but he is able to avoid the fatal blow once more. He has been fighting this wolf for over 5 minutes now and hasn't taken a single bit of damage the entire time, but the wolf's hide is so thick that he's not sure he is doing any damage even though he has landed over 200 critical hits. His weapon is also running out of durability, so if he doesn't find a weak spot on this thing soon, there's no way he can win. This fight is way out of his league as a beginner, but that is exactly how he likes his challenges, impossibly difficult and borderline psychotic. But this time, the challenge proves to be too much for Rakuro to handle and he finds himself on the ground, missing both legs and about to be killed. At this moment, he decided that he doesn't care about the game's main story or completing any other side quests. He is going to defeat Lekagan at some day. That day may not be today, but he is definitely going to do it. And as Lekagan delivers the final blow and kills him, he is given a new status effect, Lekagan's Curse. He respawns in the second village and finds his body now has red marks all over it. This is part of Lekagan's curse, and no items can be equipped to the afflicted area, so he's thoroughly screwed since he now can't wear armor, even if he wanted to. And on top of that, the only way to get rid of the curse is to get a saint to do it, or to kill the one who placed the curse in the first place. He is now back to being viewed as a weirdo by all the other players, but he's got to stay calm and take the best course of action with the cards he has been dealt. With how many games he has played with bugs that put you at a serious disadvantage, he should be able to get through this. He first decides to allocate the stat points that he got from fighting Lekagan, but he can only really put them into stamina or agility now since with no armor. Upgrading HP would be pointless. He continues to agonize over his situation when a bunny suddenly drops out of the sky and lands on his head. It is a little too classy to be a killer bunny, so he thinks it must be some kind of game event. He chases it through the alleyway until it walks into a glowing door in the middle of a wall. The door reads Unique Scenario, Invitation of Rabbituza. He had read about something like this being in the game before. With an expansion main story, Shangri-La also has several side missions, including unique scenarios which are said to give top-class skills and equipment, so there's no way he is going to pass it up now that he has encountered one. He enters the door, but what he failed to see is that the recommended level for taking on the scenario is 80, but his level is only 28. Rakuro walks into the Rabbituza and is greeted by the bunny, which he had followed in here. It praises him for his fight against Lickigan despite his low level and was greatly impressed by how well he dodged the attacks before finally being defeated. But though Rakuro didn't manage to do much damage to it, that was only because of Lickigan's overwhelming power. And even Lickigan acknowledged him as an opponent, which is why he placed a curse on him. The bunnies have been wanting to meet Rakuro ever since then, and that is why Emil was sent to go and fetch him by their boss. Rakuro asks if there is any chance that their boss is angry about the bunnies Rakuro killed while trying to get the matching knives, but that has nothing to do with any of this. She takes him up to the palace where the boss is waiting for him, and since he is the first person to ever be brought here, he is quite excited to see what kind of reward he will be getting. But as he is brought into the room, what he sees is the most mafia-looking bunny he's ever seen, Visage, and it makes him tense up a bit as Visage asks him to chat for a little bit. It's the middle of summer break, and back at the video game store, Ray is still stalking the entrance in case Rakuro decides to stop by here as she can't find him in the game. Mana walks up to her and informs her that since it is summer break, he likely won't be coming back for a while and will be engrossed in playing Shangri-La. It's kind of odd she hasn't been able to find him at all in the game, but that's because he skipped the tutorial altogether and went straight to the second village. Mana finds it funny to hear what he did, but that sounds about right for something Rakuro would do. She wishes Ray luck in her quest to find Rakuro in the game, or alternatively, she could just ask him to play with her the next time she sees him IRL. But for her, directly talking to her crush is out of the question. At Rakuro's house, his little sister, Rumi, is heading out and telling him that she will be coming back late since she has work later. Meanwhile, Rakuro is busy reading up on everything there is to know about unique scenarios. The invitation to Rabbituza is a unique scenario triggered after defeating a monster of a higher level than yourself with a weapon acquired from a bunny. The wiki page says that once the event is triggered, a bunny will appear in the city around a player and run around before leading them to Rabbituza. Once in the Rabbit City, the player will be tasked with defeating a giant snake that is plaguing them, and upon doing so will learn the spell Enchant Vorpal. He encountered a Yakuza bunny that felt just as intimidating as Lickigan. Visage told Rakuro that he was very impressed by the fight he had with Lickigan, and even more so with the Vorpal spirit that he showed, but Rakuro has no idea what Vorpal spirit is meant to be. Visage then continues that he would be happy to train Rakuro up to a point where he can handle Lickigan, at which point he realizes that this must be a training quest, which could yield great buffs for him. So he has no reason to refuse and gets down on his knees saying, "I place myself in your hands, brother." The last brother part caught Visage's attention and gets him to stand up in all his terrifying presence. He starts walking over to Rakuro, making him think he might have been a little too familiar with him and said something wrong. But quite the contrary, Visage likes that kind of response and tells Rakuro that he can call him Vash. He says he sees potential in Rakuro and puts him in the care of Emil, his daughter for now. She is really excited and wants to get right into showing him around the palace, but Rakuro tells her that he has been playing for a really long time now and wants to take a break for a little bit and also take some time to look up the whole unique scenario and unique monsters thing. Emil is disappointed, but she tells Rakuro that she can show him to the inn they have in the palace so he can set his respawn point there, and he is all for it. However, before Vash leaves, he remembers there was something he had to do and throws a collar into the air and around Rakuro's neck. The Vorpal Soul Collar has the effect of cutting the experience one gains in half, but it also raises the stat number of stat points acquired by 2.5 times. He tries to take the collar off after realizing that the collar restricts his experience gain, but he is told that he is unable to take off the collar unless Vash allows it, and it is necessary to place restrictions to bring out the most growth. Rakuro isn't too happy about the new restriction on his experience points, but after thinking about it a little, the stat point increase is ridiculously advantageous, so it's not that bad. After checking all the online forums, he hasn't found anyone that knows about Vash or Emil, much less the Vorpal Soul Collar or the Rabbituza Palace, meaning this is a unique scenario which he alone knows about, and that makes him happy. He looks at the time and realizes that he has an appointment in another game with a friend of his called Katzo. He has to go meet him in Berserk Online, which he hasn't played in a long time. The game is obviously a trash game, and over the years, its player base has reduced to only 100 logins a day, leading many to wonder why they are still keeping the service going. With such a small player base, everyone who is still playing the game knows each other as they are all fellow trash game enthusiasts. Now that Rakuro has logged in and met Katsuo, they get down to business and begin their fight. There is only one rule in place: there are no rules, so Katsuo starts off with a tentacle arm glitched attack that he discovered while Rakuro was playing Feria Chronicles. Though this neither impresses nor phases him, as he uses his own glitched attack and instant punch glitch. With this attack, he can block any attack as long as his EP stays above 12. Even an insta-kill wouldn't be able to get through his barrage of fists. As they continue to fight, the other players recognize Katsuo and Rakuro and all go over to watch, since this is a matchup with the top-tier players of the bug-out game. Rakuro finally manages to break through Katsuo's defense and cuts one of his hands off. But thanks to another glitch, the dismembered hand is still able to move and punches Rakuro, knocking him out and winning the game for Katsuo. Even though he lost, Rakuro is still glad to get the change of pace and fight another person rather than only NPCs. Hearing Rakuro say that he has been fighting NPCs, he realizes that he was being serious when he emailed him to say he was going to start playing Shangri-La. But he never thought he would see the day where Rakuro would play a game that was actually good. Rakuro tells him to listen first. There are these monsters in Shangri-La called the Seven Colossi that are ridiculously strong, and they are so rare that across the entire player base, they only know the names of 4 of them. And since the game launched a year ago, not a single person has actually managed to defeat one of these monsters in a fight, and Rakuro got killed by one of them recently. So he has decided that he won't stop playing the game until he has defeated Likagan. Hearing Rakuro talk about Shangri-La so enthusiastically, Katsuo decides that he will start playing as well. He also messages someone else they know to tell her that Rakuro is playing Shangri-La. This person, Arthur Pencilgon, receives the message while in the middle of combat with several players, and she's also shocked that Rakuro would play a game that isn't trash. But as she finishes off the rest of the players around her, she talks about how she is going to have to find him in the game, and I assume that means she wants to fight him because she is clearly not against killing other players. Meanwhile, Rakuro logs back into Shangri-La and returns to the second village. He returned here with Emil through a teleport gate, which she can use anytime she wants, but she asks him why he wanted to come back here so soon when there's a bunch of interesting stuff he can do in the Rabbituza Palace. He tells her he is definitely interested in taking a tour of the palace, but there was something he had to do here first. There have been a lot of new players in the game since summer break started, and due to this, the starter village is completely packed with them. So he wants to get to the third village before he takes on the Rabbituza unique scenario, as once the players start pouring in here, the village is going to get crowded and resources are going to become scarce as people fight over them. She didn't understand a single word of what he just said, but she's happy to go along with whatever he wants to do, so if he wants to get to the third village, she will gladly help him get there. After saying that, she sends him a party request, surprising Rakuro because he wasn't aware that he could have NPCs in his party. Emil says it's only natural since he can't get back into Rabbituza without her, but he just thought she would follow him around until he wanted to go back. He accepts the request and has Emil climb in his shoulder so they can get going. But then 2 girls walk past him and notice Emil, thinking she is cute, and ask him how he managed to get a Vorpal bunny as a pet. Since this is part of a unique scenario that only he knows about, he would like to keep it to himself until he has finished clearing it. So he takes off running without answering any of their questions. But before he can get out of sight, one of the girls takes a picture of him and Emil so they can ask the forums about it later. They make it to the wastelands and Emil asks what he came all the way out here for. Rakuro tells her that he had something he wanted to check related to his curse. It says monsters of lower levels will flee from him, so he puts it to the test as a monster charges at him. Once the monster spots the curse marks on him, it turns around and starts running for its life, so Rakuro chases it down into a wall, and as it turns to the left, he blocks its path and kills it with the extra momentum from his chase. Emil compliments him on his ferocity while hunting down a monster that was trying to flee from him, so he takes it as a compliment and tells her that now he has confirmed that low-level monsters won't attack him, they are going straight to the area boss and will just ignore the monsters along the way. While they head over to the area boss, Rakuro realizes that he forgot to get any information about the boss before heading out to kill it, so he asks Emil if she knows anything about it. She tells him that it's a monster called Mud Digger and comes out of the ground to attack you, so it is very important to find a way to keep it in place if planned to defeat it. Once they get there, Rakuro finds that the battleground is a swamp as far as the eye can see. Mud Digger emerges from the ground and Rakuro realizes that he is in the worst possible case scenario for his build. Because of not being able to wear armor, he put all his stats into his speed, but swamp forces a player into a walking state, meaning you won't be able to use any of his speed here at all. He's got no idea what to do as the monster leaps up into the air and dives into the mud that is supposedly 6 inches deep. Don't think about it too much. It is fast approaching them, and the mud prevents him from jumping out of the way like he normally would, so he instead comes up with a plan to evade using one of his skills, which upgraded. Thanks to the experience he gained from his fight with Lekagon, a lot of his usual skills reach a new level, and consequently, as the monster turns to attack him again, Rakuro reveals that he has unlocked the next level of perfect parry, Repel Counter, allowing him to not only block the incoming attack, but to also perform an attack of his own in the split second after blocking. He has successfully countered, but the immediate problem of his lack of mobility still hasn't been addressed yet, and there is the matter of the recast time of his skills, meaning he can't use them again for a few seconds, so he is a sitting duck for the mud monster's strikes. It swims towards him and launches another attack while Rakuro is still unable to move, but luckily for him, he's not alone as Emil puts on her glasses and pulls out a book to back him up with her magic spell and knock it back. Rakuro is greatly impressed by her magic and thankful for saving his life there. He realizes that he has been too focused on playing solo this game, and had forgotten that he has Emil here to help him. It kinda hurts his gamer pride that he is relying on an NPC that is stronger than him, but when in Rome, you let the magic bunny do her thing. The monster has been stunned, so Rakuro wants to use this chance to close the distance between them and attack it, but it is still painfully slow. By the time they have finally made it to the monster, it has had enough time to wake up, roll out of bed, and make a cup of coffee, so it once again tries to attack the two of them. But during that time, Rakuro has managed to get close enough to put it within striking distance, so he uses one of his upgraded attacks to hit it and deal some extra knockback. He then uses his knives to scale the side of the monster and get on top of it before asking Emil to use some of her magic to make a big boom on his forehead. And while she charges up the spell, he is just going to keep balancing on its nose, since he has played way harder platformers than this, so he's not going to be falling off anytime soon. The monster then switches tactics and tries to attack him while he is in the air, but he is out of luck as the cooldown on Rakuro's repel counter has reset, and he once again uses it to block and return an attack of his own. And at the same time, Emil has finally finished charging her spell, so she unleashes the edge slash, striking the monster to the ground. Rakuro also falls down, taking some fall damage, but he is more focused on how amazing Emil's attack power was, and Emil is focused on her clothes that got all muddy now. He is happy with how well the attack worked on the monster. But wait, where did it go? He looks around but can't see any signs of it until the ground beneath his feet starts shaking and he is unable to move. All gamers know what this means, and Rakuro is already within the kill zone. So he picks Emil up and throws her out of range to at least save her. He has accepted his fate, but as the monster pops out from under him, he is surprised to find that he is still alive. He took a bit of damage, but he was expecting an insta-kill, but he was just thrown into the air. However, from this height, he can tell what's going to happen next. The monster is a catfish quadruped with mole-like capabilities. It is known to have a special move set, which is only activated once its HP is at a certain level. It dives deep into the swamp and vibrates it, locking players in place. It then randomly knocks one of the players into the air with its nose, but the damage comes from the fall afterwards. If a player challenges the boss alone, the random chance will be turned into a guaranteed hit, which will inevitably shave down their health after a few attack cycles. Rakuro is annoyed because an unavoidable attack doesn't even factor in player skill, but he still has to think of a way to save himself before he goes splat. He sees Emil making her way towards him and thinks about asking her to use her magic to strike him to cancel out the fall damage, but the strike alone would probably kill him anyway. He doesn't have any magic items on him, so plain and simple, he's fucked. And the fall damage deaths in these kinds of games always feel so real, so it's not going to be a pleasant feeling. However, before he can feel the experience of his neck folding in on itself, Emil manages to get up to him and activate a magic item she possessed to teleport them away. But it just teleported them back into the air, so fall damage is still a problem. However, as they are now above the mud digger, it is now its problem, as with all the momentum that Rakuro picked up, falling on it now counts as an attack. So to the mud digger, congratulations, you played yourself. And thanks to his luck stat, Rakuro managed to survive the fall with 1 HP left, which seems unlikely, but he's not gonna complain about it. He has now leveled up to level 29, and Emil congratulates him on a job well done. The fight was pretty tough, comparable to the time he fought Lekagon, but the key difference this time is that he actually survived the ordeal and cleared the boss. They continue walking to the third city, and Rakuro takes a fistful of herbs, shoving them down his mask to eat and regain some of his health, which looks really weird to Emil. Emil is excited that once they get to the third city, Rakuro will finally go back to Rabbituza and start training there. But there is still the problem of how he is going to hide Emil from the people in the city, since he would rather not draw too much attention to himself there. If anyone figures out that he has a unique scenario, he might even get jumped because of it. So to help avoid that, Emil shows that she has a special bracelet that allows her to transform into a human. She is quite pleased with herself since she should now be able to get into the city without drawing any attention to Rakuro. But Rakuro is lost in thought because he had thought this was meant to be a God tier number 1 game for Japan. But once the bunny girl line is crossed, you start to drift into harem territory and there's no coming back from that. Emil suddenly transforms back because apparently the transformation is quite taxing and leaves her feeling very exhausted, so 4 or 5 minutes is all she can handle for now. She will transform again when they get near the town, but will have to undo it once they are in private. However, even with Emil's transformation, there is still only so much you can do to be conspicuous when you are a character with a bird head and no clothes. They finally make it to the 3rd village, and while Emil is in awe of its beauty, Rakuro just goes, "Oh, cool city, I guess." He has played a lot of games and seen a lot of cities, so something like this isn't all that special to him. They make their way down the mountain into the city gates, so Emil transforms once more. Once they arrive, as expected, the guards find it strange that Rakuro has no clothes on and wonder if he was mugged on his way here, but Emil then jumps in with a long blown out of proportion story of Rakuro and his adventures, so the guard give up and just let them pass. But at the same time, Rakuro is getting a bunch of death glares making him think something is up, since that doesn't normally happen. He and Emil are about to leave when Rakuro is suddenly grabbed by the worst kind of assailant, a furry. A few hours earlier, after he ran away from those 2 girls that were questioning him, they took a picture and uploaded it to a forum to get information about the bunny. And with the information circulating, that is when Rakuro caught the attention of the furry. One of the veteran players called the 2 girls out for doxing Rakuro because they didn't get his consent before uploading his information. But that's not where it ended because other players started to notice Lekhagan's curse marks on him and are getting interested in it. Some even plan to spawn kill him until he explains everything about it, while others are making an effort to protect him. So he's going to have to deal with a lot of people now. And right now, the first person to confront him is this girl asking him how he got that bunny. Rakuro realizes someone must have leaked his information, but tries to play it off like he doesn't know anything. However, shortly after, he gets attacked by Arthur Pencildon, whom he knew from other trash games they played together. But she hasn't come for a friendly chat, she is here for blood, and he's going to have to be ready to face her. She's a friend in the art of trash games and an avid player, but to understand their relationship, we must first go to the trash game Unite Rounds. We see 2 players looting the store of an NPC who was just innocently trying to make a living, but as they walk away with their haul, the looters fall victim to Rakuro, who is on his own looting spree. The game was originally made to provide immersion into the story of a kingdom on the brink of collapse, with the players taking on the role of knights fighting to defend the people, but the game devs had a boner for the suffering of their players, so they made the drop rates unreasonably low. I mean, seriously, even rocks only have a drop rate of 40%. With these kinds of drop rates, the first quest, which was just a simple herb gathering quest, took 12 hours to collect by hand in the swamp, so naturally players had to find an easier way to get what they needed, and the secret ingredient was crime. If you didn't want to waste time finding items for yourself, just rob a store or steal them from a player who already has it. And with such a dangerous world where every other player is an enemy, there was a figure who made their way to the top of sheer violence and tons of NPC blood. That was Pencil Knight, and under her, the Pencil Kingdom was formed. But when your ruler is a ruthless plunderer, the rest of the players wouldn't last long. Then, later on, Rakuro and Katsuo happened to come to the castle while playing. Rakuro takes a moment to look through the items that the dead players had on them, and Katsuo questions the objective of the game. He thought it was to protect the people in this kingdom from monsters, but all players are worse than those monsters. None of the countless war crimes committed really mattered though, because they came here for one reason and one reason only. They are here to assassinate the Pencil Knight. She established herself as the most powerful player on the server and would abuse anyone who did not join her side, and now she sits in her throne room with the new name of Dystopian Empress. She is surprised to see that people actually made it to her throne room alive and says she will remember Rakuro and Katsuo's names as she gets up to fight them. She's got a long history with Rakuro, but back in Unite Rounds, they always fought to a draw where they would both end up dying. But now she's much higher level than him, so he's at an outstanding disadvantage. She charges at him and slashes with her sword, but Rakuro ducks underneath and their faces get really close as she tells him he should be flattered that she came all the way here just to kill him. She flies past him and uses her sword to catch herself while throwing 3 knives at Rakuro. He dodges them easily, and she complains that those knives were useless even though they are so expensive. She asks Rakuro what level he is because even he should be around level 30, he is dodging really well. Meanwhile, the furry has just recognized Pensilogon as the second in command of the player-killing clan on the server, nicknamed Giant Killer. Meanwhile, Emil is starting to get tired and her transformation is wearing off. Rakuro asks why she is called the Giant Killer, and she explains that when she started playing initially, she would focus on ambushing and killing players that were much stronger than her. But then the devs patched that out, so it's been a lot harder to do lately. Rakuro finds it funny that she was going after the giants of the game when she got herself killed as the Giant of Unite rounds, but she doesn't find it very funny and attacks him again. He dodges and counters her, leading to a heated exchange of blows. Pensilogon tells him that her clan leader asked her to come here to deliver a message to Rakuro. He has to publish the information on the unique scenario, or he will be hunted down until he does. However, Rakuro isn't feeling very scared by the threat. He is able to dodge and block all of Pensilogon's strikes, but there is still a huge gap in their equipment level, so beating her isn't very likely. He notices that Pensilogon is trying to keep him away from the city gate, probably because it would make it harder to fight him if she were in there, but he still has to think of a way to get past her. While he is still fighting Pensilogon, Emil is fighting to keep her transformation together, but as the furry taps her on the shoulder to ask her a question, she loses focus and turns back into a bunny. And honestly, I fear for what may happen while she's in the hands of a furry. However, he thinks of a way to get out of this mess and uses Repel Counter to push Pensilogon back a bit. He then calls to Emil to get on his shoulders and starts running to the city. The furry cries about at least wanting to get a photo with Emil, to which Rakuro says he will consider it if he can survive this. Pensilogon gets back on her feet and starts chasing Rakuro, but before she can catch up, she gets blocked by the furry. She does really care about Rakuro, but she is not gonna let that bunny die. Rakuro is happy to escape and is about to make it to the city gate so Emil can teleport him to Rabbituza, but it seems that Pensilogon did not come here alone. The players in front of Rakuro are all players from the player-killing clan that were sent to kill him. They dislike killing people that have low levels compared to them since the penalties for doing so are really bad, but their boss sent them here precisely because he didn't want to have to deal with the penalty. Pensilogon wanted to handle Rakuro, but now she gets the chance to fight a member of the Shangri-La Pita clan is a good chance as well, so she's okay with how things turned out. The 4-player killers attack Rakuro at once, and he's having a hard time dodging all their attacks, but he is not one to buckle in the face of a challenge. Even when that challenge is better gear, higher level, and greater stats. Animalia fires off a magic attack at Pensilogon, which should be enough to defeat her. But as she takes a better look, she realizes that Pensilogon is actually absorbing all the magic and not taking any damage at all. And after the spell has been fully discharged, she fires it straight back at Animalia, knocking her back and draining almost all of her HP. Animalia had a specialty in debuffs for the purpose of weakening the enemy, but with all those curses being reflected back at her, she is left in an incredibly weak state. Pensilogon was aware of how scary curses can be as they bypass all armor and normal defenses, so she always carries around this item which reflects all curses cast back at the caster. So now, Animalia is helpless and will slowly die to her own magic. Across the battlefield, Rakuro is still engaged in deadly combat with the player killers and evading their strikes with great precision. They all come at him at once, so Rakuro decides to pick one of them out as a target while he is still being underestimated by them. But the real problem here is that he won't be able to damage the high-level players with their armor. However, he is in luck because his stalker, Ray, has come to save him. She kills one of the player killers with a single slash, and the others are scared as hell because they recognize her as the attack master. Rakuro doesn't know who she is, so he just thinks this is more trouble coming his way, but Ray looks back and confirms that it is indeed Rakuro. Back in the real world, Ray was feeling down about not being able to find Rakuro in the game at all, and asking him in person still isn't an option. All the games Rakuro plays were all too hard for her to get into, and she's been keeping a catalog of every single game he has played, so she has tried them all. But with Shangri-La, she's actually good at this one, and with Rakuro playing it, she can't miss this chance to actually talk to him. She logs into the game and immediately receives a message from her sister about a person matching Rakuro's description, so she gets out of the second city and just starts sprinting. This is the first chance she has gotten to actually meet Rakuro here, so she isn't going to let him die and charges in. And as a plus, if she can save him from the player killers, she will actually have a reason to talk to him in the game, and maybe one day in real life too. Pensilogon is busy thinking about how Rakuro's skill he built up from all those years of playing trash games has made him something much more important than high stats or equipment. He's just good. And with Katsuo also playing, she thinks the project she was thinking of starting would be more achievable. She looks over to the battle and notices that Ray is also here and can't believe she managed to find so many strong players in one go like this. She's about to run over there, but Animalia is not dead yet. That item that reflects spells is extremely powerful, so the devs had to balance it by making it so it doesn't reflect any more than 5 spells. So now that the item can no longer reflect her magic, how will she handle her trump card? We see a bit of how Rei began to fall for Rakuro. She was walking to school alone and was quietly watching Rakuro as he talked with a friend of his about how terrible the latest trash game he played was, but how much fun he had playing it, and she thought he looked like he was having fun. Later in school, she sees Rakuro talking to another one of his friends and remarks again that he always seems to be having so much fun, but then realizes that she is crossing into stalker territory and goes about her business. Later in judo practice, after hip throwing a dude to the ground, she realized that she may have actually become interested in Rakuro, and that was the day she passed the point of no return and officially became a stalker. She would follow him to the game store and watch him from the corner of the room, fantasizing about actually going up and talking to him. But that was when Mana approached her and reminded her about the store's no-stalking policy. She tried talking to him once while he was passing through the halls, but he was busy with his friend and talking to him when he was alone would be way too embarrassing. So she wanted to try something easier first, like in a game. So here we are. With all that stalking having paid off, she has finally found Rakuro. And saving him here is sure to be a good conversation starter, so she's going to give it all she's got. Rakuro doesn't know that she is Rei, but he recognizes that the character is extremely powerful and thinks they must be here to get information about the unique scenario as well. He needs some way to get past them all without dying, and meanwhile, Animalia is getting ready for her final stand against Pensiligon. After taking the brunt of all her own spells, her health is in the red and dropping fast. However, Pensiligon has used all her spells' reflection items, and that means the next one is going to hit. She activates her trump card spell and her staff begins doing this. The spell she's about to cast requires high-level spell mastery and the user's health to be in the single digits, but once activated, it is an instant death that takes both the user and the target down. And as Pensiligon realizes it is too late to get out of range, Animalia has one final thing to say before they both die. Get wrecked, bitch. The purple light envelopes the both of them as they perish, and that light provides Rakuro with just the distraction he needed to escape the attackers, and he is not going to miss this opportunity. He tells Emil to get the gate to Rabatuza ready as he runs up Rei's sword and steps on her head with his bare feet, apologizing for using her like this before jumping over the player killers and behind them. Then he starts making another mad dash for the city gates, and the player killers try to stop him because if he goes into the city, they follow him or they'll be swarmed by bounty hunters. However, Rei keeps them busy long enough for Rakuro to escape, and he makes a note to remember that character if they ever meet again. The player killers are angry with Rei for interfering in their mission, but she is too busy creaming herself because Rakuro just touched her with his bare feet and actually spoke to her. One of the player killers sees that she is acting weirdly and tries to get a sneak attack in, but Rei snaps back to reality as she realizes that she could have gotten the chance to talk to Rakuro more if these people weren't attacking him. So from no win, it's a personal beef, and she's gonna make sure none of them leave here alive. Meanwhile, Rakuro has finally made it back to Rabatuza and is relieved that they are now safe. Rakuro gets a message from Pensiligon after she died to clarify that he had nothing to do with her death, so he technically didn't beat her. But there's something else she wants to discuss, so she wants to meet up with him and Katsuo and unite rounds so they can talk. He finds the invitation to be very fishy, and so does Katsuo, but it could at least be a bit interesting, so they might as well hear out what she wants to say. But before he does that, he wants to finally begin the unique scenario training in earnest. He asks her how they are going to do the training, and she tells him she'll show the way to the room they use for practical combat training. The Vorpal Coliseum. Vashant said he wanted Rakuro to defeat 10 monsters here as the first part of his training, with the rules being that he can only use Vorpal weapons like those knives he has. He agrees and asks for the battle to begin. He doesn't really expect to be able to get through all 10 battles on the first try, but after he learns the skills and movement patterns, he might be able to pull it off. However, as the gate is raised, instead of just one monster, he is faced with a pack of wolves as his first opponent, all of whom are at least level 65 while he's still below level 30. So in short, he gets dogpiled and dies a gruesome death. Elsewhere, after she had finished killing all the player killers, Rei logs out of game and continues to cream herself over Rakuro's first words to her. She thinks about what she should do the next time she manages to meet him and decides that she will send him a friend request if she gets the chance and hopes Rakuro will accept it. And maybe from there, they can extend their relationship to real life too. That's a lot of exciting things she is thinking about, but now she needs to change her underwear and gets out of bed. Meanwhile, Rakuro is on his 7th try at the first trial of Rabatuza, and Emil cheers him on, saying 7th time's the charm as the wolves pour out of the gates once more. At least when he dies in this arena, there isn't a death penalty like what happens when he dies outside, so he can keep fighting as much as he wants. But at the same time, the wolves aren't exactly easy to fight. It's not their numbers, or the fact that every single one of them is twice his level that makes them difficult to beat, but rather, it's the fact that they work together extremely efficiently and don't give him any time to fight back. This kind of coordinated jumping only occurs when there's someone giving out commands in the team, and after fighting these wolves 12 times, he can tell exactly who is giving out those commands. It's the one wolf that only ever barks when it is in a safe spot and never actually joins in on the fight. He targets the leader wolf and activates Spiral Edge to stab the wolf and lower its HP a little. The wolf leader begins to run away from Rakuro, and without it giving the others orders, their attacks became far less coordinated and easily avoidable. So Rakuro is able to focus on killing the commander before it can give out any more orders. He throws one of his knives, stabbing the wolf in the back and slashing it several times until its health drops to 0 and it dies. And now that their leader is dead, the rest of the wolves are nothing but a pack of isolated monsters which he can easily take care of by himself. And with that, the first round has been cleared. Emil congratulates him on the victory over the pack of wolves, but Rakuro just wants the next monster to be a single one and not a team. Emil assures him that the next monster is alone, but as she opens the gate, the monster might technically be alone, but if you are able to greet one of your heads good morning, it is basically the same as fighting a team. So the hard grind to complete the challenges continued, and Rakuro managed to defeat the tentacle bear by cutting off all its tentacles as they attacked him. After that, he had to face a goblin that had been hitting the gym, but no matter how big the goblin's guns were, they were no match for Rakuro. Then there was the bird, and Rakuro will never forgive it for betraying his own kind and pooping poison on him. So this one took over 100 attempts to finally kill. He has finally completed 9 out of the 10 trials, but even after all that fighting, his level only went up by 2 points because of that Vorpal collar, and he is so angry about it that he starts JoJo posing. He's starting to lose his mind a little, what he says he is still primed and ready for the final battle of the trial. And just then, Vash shows up to congratulate Rakuro on beating the 9th monster of the trial. He hadn't expected him to be done with 9 by now, but it's perfect timing because he just got something for him. Rakuro thinks this is probably an event triggered by completing the 9th battle, so now for the 10th monster, Vash has brought someone he just captured. He tosses the monster into the ring and removes the binding spell he had placed on it to allow it to fight. It was a person who tried to extend their life by combining themselves with a tree, giving them a constant case of literal morning wood. Rakuro has no idea what that thing and doesn't think it would be human either, but is clearly a sorcerer type. Vash doesn't expect Rakuro to be able to beat that thing anytime soon, so he sets the clear condition for this trial to simply be surviving for 5 minutes against it. Rakuro doesn't think that is going to be much of a challenge for him, but the tree sends a root attack at him that makes him eat those words. He is struggling and just barely able to keep up with its onslaught attacks, realizing that 5 minutes may be a pretty long time to stay alive. With over 30 million players in Shangri-La Frontier, Rakuro is still the first person to ever fight this monster that is over level 120, but it will be a long time before he realizes that. After dodging for a while, he realizes he isn't getting anywhere with this thing and needs to do something different, so he switches tactics and starts charging towards the tree wizard, slashing at it with his knives. But this thing must have been munching on iron for breakfast, because those knives did no damage at all. So realizing his knives are basically useless for the duration of this fight, Rakuro sticks to what he can do, dodging while a mix of chains and roots fly at him once more. Emil sounds the horn to tell Rakuro that he has successfully evaded the monster for 1 whole minute. Only 4 more to go, and Vash says he is eager to see what Rakuro can do, while having his bunny hose all over him. Rakuro thinks of the situation and gives a detailed analysis of just how screwed he is. This thing is a monster with root attacks that have no lead up, so you have to dodge on instinct. Then there are those chains that look like they'll give you tetanus if they so much as touch you, and to top it off, they chase you like it's their god-given right to tie you up. Dodging all this is a bit much. If that's not even the end of it, the dude still fires magic attacks every now and then to throw Rakuro off his game, and the more time passes, the more magic he uses against him. This battle is getting increasingly harder as 2 goes on, and now he's barely got a quarter of a second to gain his footing before the next attack is already here. He's dodging these attacks like the people at Anime Con dodge deodorant, but it's not going to get any easier from here. And the whole time the tree is smiling and enjoying every moment of torment he's inflicting on Rakuro. He activates a new kind of spell, involving some sort of poison gas, only adding to Rakuro's pain as he darts around. And it's only been 2 minutes so far. He's starting to think he might actually have a better shot at beating Likagon than even surviving against this thing. He is starting to lose hope and thinks it might be alright for him to die for now so he can go home and think of a new strategy. After all, it's not like he'll die in real life if he dies here. But that's quitter talk, and Rakuro didn't quit when he had to deal with those trash games, so why would he quit here? He's played so many games where winning is literally impossible due to bugs that he has subconsciously begun to expect to die a couple of times before completing a task. But this isn't a trash game, and it's not a forced loss battle either. This is completely doable, so he is not going to relinquish his life until he actually does it. Rakuro puts a hold on all the dodging and climbs onto the tree root, intriguing Vash. He then starts running up it and gets within melee range, but Vash doesn't see the point if he has already figured out that his attacks don't do any damage to it at all. However, Rakuro doesn't want to damage it. He's going for something more practical. He's robbing the tree. Without its staff, it shouldn't be able to cast any more spells, which should cut down on the amount of attacks Rakuro has to deal with. The tree is not happy about this because he took out a loan to pay for that fancy staff, so he uses the full force of his roots and chains to launch another attack on Rakuro, as he still has 2 minutes left before he has cleared the challenge. After losing the staff, the monster is going berserk, and Rakuro is having trouble keeping up with the constant and faster barrage of chains and roots. The tree keeps trying to get his life-saving staff back, but Rakuro only has 1 minute of evading left before he wins the round. As he continues to run, the tree puts up a wall of roots in his path, slowing him down long enough for the chains to wrap around his foot and make it completely impossible to dodge. With seconds left on the clock, the tree charges at the completely immobile Rakuro, but he gets an idea and tosses the staff into the air, forcing the tree to chase after it and buying him just enough time to clear the whole 5 minutes. However, the boss music hasn't stopped playing and the tree is still firing spells at him. The whole survive for 5 minutes thing was Vash's idea, and the tree never really agreed to do that. He just wanted to kill Rakuro. But before he gets killed, Vash steps in to save him, one-shotting the monster that Rakuro could do no damage against. Vash congratulates him on the successful completion of the quest and presents him with his reward. He is now an honorary Rabbituzan, and while it's not like he doesn't appreciate the citizenship, he was hoping for something like a rare item. But nope, that's all he gets. See you next week. There was at least an additional unique scenario that doesn't want to deal with that right now, so he logs out for the day and finally goes to sleep. Later on, he's back in the game and taking a look at that unique scenario he got after finishing the last one, but he's got no idea what it actually is. It has something to do with divinity and some ruins, but the wiki related to that is a full 1,000-page thesis, and he didn't come here to have to study. He immediately accepted it since it was a unique scenario, but he didn't know how he was supposed to get it to even begin in the first place, so he decided to put a hold on the unique scenarios stuff for now and do something else. So they are going to head out of Rabbituza. However, he recalls that people are on the lookout for him, and he will definitely get jumped on sight again if they recognize him in the city. And even though he could change his mask to keep his identity hidden, the Lekagun's mark would still draw too much attention and cause him to be found out. He still can't put on anything gear on his torso either, so covering up the mark with armor isn't going to be possible either. Imel has a suggestion if he is trying to cover himself up and takes him to another bunny in Rabbituza, Pete's. He's her brother and also runs a shop with items from all over the world and sells them here, but he clarifies that he doesn't sell things exclusively in Rabbituza. He also goes to the human world as well, though not as often since he has to transform into a human to do so. But if Birdman ever happens to see him out in the city, he's free to come say hello to him. Rakuro appreciates the offer, but feels the need to mention that he is still a regular human. He just happens to wear a bird mask as a matter of style. Back on topic, Rakuro is looking for something to cover up his body which won't be affected by Lekagun's curse, and will keep his identity secret. And Pete's seems to have just the thing to solve that problem for him. It's a cloak. Does it look good? No, but it's a cloak. He buys a map of the city and heads out with Imel, but he can only keep it together for so long because this thing is definitely a mean costume. She tries to calm him down so he doesn't draw too much attention to themselves, and they continue down the path. At least he was able to buy the map and some recovery potions to keep Imel's transformation going, so they should get going to the next area before their items run out. On the map, there seem to be 3 different areas they can head to from here: the lush forest, the volcano lake, and the ancient iron ruins of divinity. Rakuro is lost in thought thinking of which area to visit first, and he finally comes to the conclusion to go to the lush forest. His reasoning is that though the iron ruins of divinity sound really rewarding, with all the technology they have there, the enemies have things like guns, it would be a pain to deal with that. While he was talking, Imel looks behind them and spots Ray's character stalking him just like she does in real life. And as he turns around to see the knight just watching him from behind a corner, he's thrown off by her stare him down cause she's looking really menacing right now. In a shipwreck somewhere on the map, the leader of the Ashura Kai player Killers, Orkalot reprimands his team for bringing shame to the guild's name by failing to kill Rakuro, They apologize and explain that they had no way of knowing that the attack master would join in on the fight, so they stood no chance. He counters that this is a unique scenario that they are talking about here, so it is only natural to expect that other top players would join in on the hunt. But with that being the case, Pensilogon questions why he hadn't come out to join them in the fight. He says he had stuff to do, so it was definitely not because he was scared or anything. Changing the topic, he speculates that the rabbit he was carrying around in the picture must have something to do with the unique scenario. He thinks Rakuro is a newbie, so he mustn't be familiar with the mechanics of the game, so he wants them to find Rakuro and make him tell them how he did it, even if they have to threaten to dox him. That's all well and good, but Pensilogon thinks they should focus a little more on finishing off the unique monster they found first. Orkalot grows exasperated and tells her that unique monster battles aren't made to be beatable in the first place, so there is no point in trying to beat one. For now, they are the only ones that know how to make him show up, so he just wants to make good use of the experience that they get from the encounter to help boost the clan's firepower. Seeing that they aren't going to be of much help with her plans, Pensilogon gets up to leave. The Ashura Kai used to challenge any and all people that came their way head-on, which was why she joined. But after the new update that hit player killers with heavy penalties, they became more reserved about what fights they took on, valuing stability more. She would never have thought she would end up putting her body on the line for a simple NPC, but here she is, and if she's going to take the gamble of winning or losing, she's gonna bet everything she's got on it. No matter what, she will take down the unique monster. Back to Rakuro, who has just noticed Rei watching him from the corner. He thinks she must be here for revenge for him stepping on her earlier, so he doesn't want to stick around to find out what she's gonna do, and makes a run for it. The Ashura clan members that were tasked with finding Rakuro are still out on the prowl for him, but since they can't find his bird character, they assume he must have gone to a different area. That is until they see him running down the streets to get away from something. They think it is just a weirdo running around in a ghost costume at first, but after seeing Rakuro's name above the weirdo's head, they realize it's their target and begin to chase after him. Rakuro and Emil run across the roofs while being chased by the clan, so he tells Emil that they will be going to the next location. The clan sees the direction he is running in and thinks he is heading to the Iron Ruins of Divinity, so they call on the rest of the clan to lay an ambush for him. However, this was all part of Rakuro's plan since he is taking a roundabout route to the lush forest to make his pursuers think he is heading to the Iron Ruins. That way, he can double back around and return to the forest once they've lost sight of him, and then they'll set up an ambush for him at the wrong location. It was a flawless plan, but it didn't account for a professional stalker like Rei. He thinks he is done for, but as she raises her hand, he is greeted by a friend request instead of a fist. Rei then says her first words to him, asking if they can be friends. Rakuro is confused by the sudden friend request, but it doesn't seem to be a ploy to get him to lower his guard, because if it was, he would have been dead by now. He thinks she might be trying to get him to tell her about the unique scenario, but all that fidgeting she's doing doesn't match up with a goal like that. Whatever she is planning, he has to respect that she was able to see through his ruse and find him here, so he chooses to accept the friend request to see what she has planned. Rei is elated to see that her friend request was accepted. When she lost sight of Rakuro, she didn't know what to do, so she just chose between the 3 random locations and went to check one of them, and luckily, she turned out to be correct in her choice. She has gotten to meet him in the game and even managed to become friends with him, but the hard part comes next. Actually speaking with him. She asks in a really shy tone if he would like her to help him with the game since he is a new player, and Rakuro takes this to be some genius plot to get him to owe her and reveal the secret of the unique scenario on his own, but he isn't going to fall for something like that so easily, so he politely declines, saying he doesn't like the idea of getting carried through a game by high-level players. She is disappointed and says she understands his point of view, but she would still like to team up with him at some point in the future, so they say their goodbyes and Rakuro heads off to do his thing. As he leaves, he questions whether he may have misread her intentions because she relented pretty easily for someone who was presumably trying to extort information from him. But there's nothing he can do about it now, so he decides to leave it as a problem for another day. Rei is disappointed that she didn't get to play with Rakuro. And there was also the girl with him, but it seemed like it was an NPC since it didn't have a player name attached. However, today counts as an overall win for Rei since she has officially had her first conversation with Rakuro. The Ashura Kai clan have realized by now that Rakuro gave them the slip and are coming to check the forest for him, but they see Rei standing in the middle of the path and decide they can check this place later. And as they run away, Rei is still giddy with excitement over today's victory and does a little dance. As Rakuro and Emil enter the forest, they can finally take off their disguises. He has been in many caves that had him met with gunfire or meteor showers, but with this one, they find themselves surrounded by a fantastical forest of glowing fauna and a wide array of insects buzzing around. And even here, The circle of life continues as the insects live and can be killed at any moment by the predators that lurk there. Rakuro is excited to see such a lively level and can't wait to get started. He spots one insect with its belly full of sap, and it is just begging to get killed for that round sack drop, so Rakuro equips his marsh daggers and gets ready to fight it. He runs up a tree and leaps into the air to slash it, but the insect is pretty nimble and evades his strikes. But in the end, it is still just an insect, and after he strikes at it one more time, it is too slow to dodge this time and gets cut up, leaving only its sack behind. Rakuro hangs from a tree and grabs the sack before it can hit the ground. He had figured that the sack would be pretty fragile, so he aimed for the butterfly's body, leaving the juicy sack intact. He has it as an item now, but he isn't sure what he's supposed to be using it as in the first place. The menu says that the nectar sac can be enjoyed by throwing it, but he's not sure what good that would do him. But regardless, he's still hyped to go around collecting many more drops in the area and eventually defeating the area boss. They continue their playthrough of the location and Rakuro finds something interesting. Imo looks, but she can't see what he's talking about, so Rakuro tells her to just watch as he pulls out a throwing knife. She asks him why he has a knife here, and it stems from the trauma he got from getting killed by that poop bird. As a result, he sought after a means to handle monsters that are out of range and bought this knife as a countermeasure. He throws it, striking a mimicry mantis in the flower. The mantis had been running and hiding with its mimicry ability, so he needed to attack it from a distance to get a good hit in and finally come in close to defeat it. This way, he can take those things down without them having the chance to sneak up on him with their mimicry. Emil is fangirling over his masterful tactics and says he has managed to gather a lot of items here. And while he is happy with the pace they are going at, there is still one that he hasn't gotten the chance to acquire yet, and that's the giant beetle that happens to currently be fighting some bees. It is huge, at about 5 meters big, and it seems that it managed to piss off the Empire bees by feeding in their territory, so the Empire Bee Queen is giving out orders for the bees to attack it. This is some National Geographic shit, and Rakuro takes on the role of the narrator for this part. The quad beetle is mowing down the bees as their stingers can't pierce its armor and is making its way up to their nest. It's not looking good for the bees, but in a turn of events, they manage to form a crack along the beetle's armor and exposing it to extra damage. The bees have already begun their secondary assault on the now weakened beetle, and in a desperate struggle, the quad beetle flails around before releasing its wings and flying straight towards the queen bee, striking her with its horn. And folks, it looks like that was the end of the queen bee. With her queen dead, the rest of the bees began to scatter and the quad beetle went back to eating like a champion. But then it noticed Rakuro and Emil, and it looks like the champion is back in the ring to defend his belt. Rakuro doesn't know why it is so riled up at them. All he wanted was to take the drop from the queen bee after it had killed her, but the beetle must have thought Rakuro was coming after it instead. Rakuro thinks quickly, and remembering that this thing loves sap, he pulls out the juicy sack he fit from the butterfly and tosses it onto a nearby mantis, distracting the beetle into killing it. And with its back turned, from the top rope, Rakuro leaps up and takes advantage of all the cracks on its shell, stabbing it like a man possessed before it finally dies. Luck was on Rakuro's side because he managed to get every single drop that can be gotten from a quad beetle, and with his inventory now full of stuff, he is satisfied with today's trip. Emil thinks it's a bit unfair that they killed the beetle only because it was already weak from fighting an entire army, but as with all wars, the person who is correct is always the one left alive. To end off today's events, they head to the final boss area and find more and more webs, and they approach the cave of the clown spider. Another group of players are also heading for the area boss battle, but one of the girls on the team is a little worried that they might be rushing into this a little prematurely, but the leader says they have nothing to be afraid of. They've made it this far, so there's nothing the boss can throw at them that they can't handle. And after saying this, as they cross the point of no return, he immediately gets himself stuck in one of the spider's webs. And as they look up, they get the scare of a lifetime as you would expect from something called a clown spider. Rakuro approaches the area boss room as well, but finds that he isn't allowed to enter the area because there are currently other players challenging the boss right now. But as one of them comes crashing down on the other side of the barrier, you can see how well that is going for them. The guy is having major trouble with this fight, in part due to the position of the spider. With it perched on the ceiling, he has to climb all the way up there to be able to attack it. But no matter how annoying it may be, he is determined to see this boss fight through. But immediately after saying this, he gets crushed to death by a rock, to the horror of Emil. Rakuro says a quick prayer for his fallen brethren, but the barrier lifts after the guy is dead, so he gets over it really quick. The guy is just going to respawn in the third city, but his death gave Rakuro some really valuable information about the boss, so he is a bit more confident as he enters the room. As he walks in, he sees the bodies of two girls strung up on the ceiling, but it doesn't faze him in the slightest. He asks Emil to wait down here and bear witness to his awesomeness. He's going for a solo no-damage run against this boss, so he just wants her to watch him work. He draws his weapons and then leaps up to begin running up the walls. He needs to get within striking distance of the spider. The higher up he goes, the denser the spider webs become, and he can't afford to get himself trapped by those things. Fortunately, he had acquired some new skills from leveling up in this forest, and they might come in handy here. He sees another one of those rocks falling his way, so he activates his leap skill and jumps out of the way just in time. That rock is likely an instant kill, so it was a good thing he already knew something like that could happen. But while it was light work for him to dodge, Emil almost got squashed as it hit the ground. She looks up and yells out, warning Rakuro of the maze of webs ahead of him. If he touches any of them, he will get trapped. But as he grabs one and stands in it, he is remarkably unensnared by the web. He lets Emil in on a little bit of trivia. There are parts of a spider web that aren't actually sticky, so while he still needs to be careful about where he places his feet, he's effectively able to use the spider's traps against it and maneuver more efficiently. Several more boulders fall towards him, but with his new skills and the additional terrain of webs, he's able to dodge them all and make it look easy. Emil is in awe of the greatness she is witnessing as Rakuro evades the falling rocks, but then she remembers. Those are falling rocks and runs away once again to avoid a painful death. Rakuro has finally made it to the top, and with this angle, Rakuro looks a lot more like the boss here. Now that he is on the same level as the spider, the rock attacks aren't going to work on him any longer, so the spider goes for melee combat and strikes at Rakuro with its leg. He dodges it, and after springboarding off one of the webs, slashes at the spider's leg, cutting it off. He then comes back around and slashes it again repeatedly, leaving the spider stunned and causing it to fall from its web perch. From this height, hitting the ground would do quite the bit of fall damage, but the spider tries to recover by Spider-Maning itself to safety, but Rakuro was having none of that and used one of his throwing knives to stop the web. Then, just like Gwen Stacy, the spider smacks into the ground at terminal velocity. However, unlike Gwen Stacy, the spider probably survived the fall, so Rakuro has to think of a way to do more damage to it from up here. And seeing all the heavy objects precariously hung from the spider's webs, he thinks it's time to give it a taste of his own medicine. As the spider was just about to recover, it takes a rock straight to the head, followed by several more rocks to the rest of its body. And there's tons more where that came from as Rakuro continues to rain rocky justice upon the clown spider. The thing is such a big target that it is easy for Rakuro to just keep hitting it until it eventually dies, but he has some reservations over finishing the battle like this. He jumps down and stands right in front of the spider to face it head-on, because if he isn't able to beat something like this without relying on game tricks, he will never have the skill necessary to beat Likagan. So he stabs the spider one last time, finally killing it with 0 damage taken through the entire fight. Emil praises him for his amazing battle, but Rakuro feels it was a bit underwhelming for a boss fight. Just then he gets a message from Pensiligan, and at the same time, Katsu gets a message from her as well. She says since Rakuro started playing Shangri-La, it might be a good time to do that thing she had talked about before. He somewhat agrees since he's been getting bored by how easy the challenges have been so far. Even the mud skipper that is meant to be unbeatable if you are playing solo was way too easy, so Katsu hopes to get proper challenge soon. Back in the real world, Rei goes to Mana's game store to tell her about the progress she's made with Rakuro. She sent him a friend request and he accepted it, but she fails to remember that she never actually introduced herself, so he has no idea that the Meg was her. Anyway, she was really impressed by Rakuro's performance in the game. He skipped the first town altogether and unlocked a unique scenario, all while playing the game for the first time ever. Rakuro hasn't come to the store for a while now since he's been playing Shangri-La, so Mana jokes that with the kind of progress he is making, he might become the first player to ever beat a unique monster. Rei laughs, saying that's probably too much for even him, but after thinking about it for a bit, it seems like something he would do. She leaves the store and walks down the street lost in thought, but then she passes a store where Rakuro is reading. She takes a double take, and upon realizing that that is actually Rakuro, she goes back into stalker mode and hides behind a mailbox to watch him. Rakuro was reading one of the interviews Katsu got where he was trash-talking his opponent. The editor for the article probably had to censor a lot because of it. On another page of the magazine, Rakuro sees that the game is going to be getting a massive summer update. This was part of what Pensilivan's message was about. They all met up in Unite Grounds to have a discussion, and Pensilivan mentions how it's been such a long time since they last all gathered here. The last time was back when they attacked her castle and the 80 players guarding it. Rakuro remembers it and has a good laugh about how fun it was. He and Katsu just did it because they were bored, but after being defeated, Pensilogon was a sore loser and blew up the castle. She claims she doesn't care about it that much, but she's secretly still butthurt over losing her empire to them. She gets a little annoyed by them making fun of her, so she wants to get back to the matter at hand. Since she went through all the trouble of gathering them here, they assume she has something more to say than just inviting them to play Shangri-La with her. She confirms it's something important and asks if they would like to join her in taking down the unique monster Weatherman, the Tom Guard. It takes a minute for what she just said to sink in for them, but once it does, Rakuro and Katsuo are excited. Katsuo is hyped to get the chance to battle one of the famed unique monsters, since he has been interested in them for a while now. When he agreed to come here, Rakuro had just thought she was going to ask them to help take down some high-level clan or something, but this is way more than he was expecting. He asked her to clarify if she thinks they actually have a chance of winning with just the three of them, since he doesn't know anything about Weatherman. The monster isn't the kind you can beat by overwhelming it with numbers, and she knows this to be true because she once faced Weatherman with 15 of the strongest members of the Ashura Kai clan, but they got wiped out. The monster's power increases with greater numbers of attacking players, but that is as much as she is willing to say unless they agree to do the battle with her. They only have one chance to win this battle. 2 weeks from now, when the summer update launches, they will battle Weatherman. Rakuro questions why she doesn't go find one of the max-level players of the game if she wants to do a battle as big as this, but what she is after isn't their player levels. What she wants is their pure skill. Katsuo is a pro gamer and Rakuro is a trash game player. They are interested, but they also know she's probably still hiding something. So they want her to spill the beans before they agree, so she smiles and begins explaining the strategy. Back to the present, Rakuro exits the store and gets called by Rei, who is still hiding behind the mailbox. She greets him, but Rakuro has an internal crisis because the last time he has even seen this girl was last year, and he can't remember her name for the life of him. He racks his brain to recall her name, but it's no use, he's drawing a blank. As the awkwardness continues to build, he finally remembers that her name is Rei, saving himself from having to ask. She works up the courage to say she heard from Mana that Rakuro is playing Shangri-La, leaving out the part that she has been stalking him for almost a year now. She asks if he would like to play with her sometime soon, but before he can answer, Pensilogon sends him a message telling him to hurry up and log into the game. Rakuro apologizes to Rei, but he's busy right now, so he runs off. Rei is just happy that she actually got to speak to Rakuro in person today. It's huge progress from her usual stalking. Back at home, Rakuro prepares to log in, but remembers that he didn't ask Rei what her character was so he could meet her in-game. He logs in and wakes up to Emil staring at his face. He gets up and tells Emil that he's going to be fighting Weatherman in 2 weeks. So while he's doing that, he's thinking of having her leave his party for a little bit because of Pensilogon and Katsuo. However, Emil didn't hear anything past the words Weatherman since she's freaking out. She runs off into Rabbituza to tell her father. The reason Rakuro told her about the fight is because after telling Pensilogon about Emil, he was informed that when an NPC dies in the game, they don't respawn, and he doesn't want to lose Emil. After Emil had informed her father of Rakuro's plans to face Weatherman, he is called into a meeting and is confronted by Vash himself. While he had heard from Emil, he wants to be sure, so he asks Rakuro if he truly intends to face that Death Defier Weatherman. Rakuro didn't know Weatherman was called the Death Defier and wonders what that could mean, but more importantly, the fact he was called into this meeting event means something important must be happening. For now, he decides to play along with the mood and stay calm in the situation. If he plays his cards right, he might even get some valuable information about Weatherman out of this. If he had the skill to deal with Phalia's ungodly personality, then he will definitely be able to convince Vash to help him out here a little. Vash speaks up, telling Rakuro that he's foolish for trying to take on Weatherman because he is still a weakling at the moment, but Rakuro was already aware of his limits and explained that he would only be playing a supporting role in the fight. His friend would be taking leading role in the fight, so it should be fine. He asks Vash if he has any idea of the current condition of Weatherman. However, Vash claims not to know since he hasn't seen Weatherman for quite some time now. After hearing this, Rakuro continues, saying that according to one of his friends, a squad of murderers is using him to farm experience for their own selfish benefit, since just by encountering him one can rake in a ton of experience. He explains that his friend Pensilogon is a defector from the murderous group and wants to take down Weatherman once and for all, and for that reason, she is taking any measure needed to ensure their victory. Vash isn't all that impressed, as he says no matter what precautions they may take, it won't be enough to beat Weatherman. They would just be walking to their deaths by facing him, and he doesn't recall ever teaching Rakuro that having a Vorpal soul was about going on suicide missions. Rakuro retorts that none of the people involved ever intended to lose from the start. He simply wants to support his friend's will to win the battle. Even if he is too weak to face him now, Rakuro asks for 2 weeks so he can train and go from an inexperienced weakling to someone who can put up a decent enough fight to face Weatherman. Rakuro's words seem to have struck a chord with Vash as he begins talking about what he knows of Weatherman. He is a clumsy guy and lost his wife over a lie, and now he is cursed with an undying body. He is nothing more than a walking corpse with goals and no way to end his, so someone needs to give him the death he needs. Vash swore never to kill him because they were once friends, but if Rakuro plans to go after him, Vash isn't going to stand in his way. So he tells Rakuro to follow him so he can give him a bit of help for the upcoming fight. He gets taken to a blacksmithing room and Rakuro is just excited. He managed to convince Vash to help. Vash calls out for someone called Bilak to come and a brown Vorpal bunny shows herself, surprised to see Vash here since he doesn't come here often. Bilak is one of Emil's siblings, leading Rakuro to believe Vash must have been really busy to have all the bunnies of Rabbituza be his children, but then again, he is a rabbit after all. Bilak looks at Rakuro, having heard a bunch about him from both Vash and Emil. She likens his eyes to those of someone she knows called Evel, but that's not important for now. Vash asks Rakuro to bring out his weapons so he can take a look at them. And after a brief inspection, he can tell that Rakuro uses these weapons very well, so he is going to ascend them for him. Bilak is both excited and shocked that Vash is going to be taking up the smithing hammer himself. But if Rakuro is going to be fighting to give Vash's friend a good death, he can't just sit by and do nothing. Bilak is full of energy and says she'll go fire up the forge immediately. After she's gone, Vash asks Rakuro if he has any rare materials on him that could be used, like something he got after a tough fight. He would exactly call it a tough fight, but he does have the quad beetle shell, and since it was able to withstand the Empire Bee's stings for a long while, it should be pretty strong. Vash agrees that it is a fine material to use and prepares to begin smithing up a storm. Bilak tells Rakuro that he's really lucky for getting the chance to watch a master work. Vash hasn't held a hammer for years now, mostly due to the fact he became the king of Rabbituza. As Vash sticks the weapon in the forge, Emil is sure Rakuro didn't know this, but Vash used to be a blacksmith before taking on the title of king, and not just any blacksmith either. His mastery over the art of blacksmithing earned him the title of master craftsman, and his knowledge of ancient forging techniques made him an ancient craftsman. So with both talents combined, he is one of the world's only divine craftsmen. The weapon has finally been heated to a satisfactory degree, so Vash is about to begin smithing. He raises the hammer and brings it down on the weapon, causing magic circles to appear in the air and get reabsorbed into the weapon. Rakuro is amazed by the sight he is witnessing and asks what those magic circles are. Bilak explains that ascension involves reading the memories and experiences weapons earn in battle and remolding them into what they are supposed to be. And by doing so, the weapon is ascended into its true form. Weapons with Vorpal in the name remember battles against strong foes, so Vash is taking those memories and the power instilled in the quad beetle shell to change the very form of the weapon. And since Rakuro was able to fight evenly with Lycagon himself, the weapons must have a wealth of experience stored up, so it'll be interesting to see what they turn into. So they all eagerly watch as Vash hammers away at the blades while singing a song. After a long bout of musical blacksmithing, Vash is finally finished with the weapons, which have now taken their true forms, as the moon blades waxing and waning. Rakuro is excited beyond belief at the new twin weapons Vash created for him and is full of appreciation. He goes to inspect the weapons and sees the effects they hold. The waxing sword has the effect of reducing his health after landing a critical hit, but giving a damage bonus on the next hit. And the waning sword refills his health under those same conditions. And on top of that, after landing several critical hits in a row, the weapons have the ability to fuse into one, making him even more excited to test this thing out in the field. But as he grabs the swords to equip them, he is hit with a dreadful error message that his stats are too low to use them. He does some quick maths and realizes that the weapons require their user to have a total stat count of 150, but he only has 57 and gets 5 each time he levels up. So in other words, he can't use these awesome weapons until he's level 50. And with this realization, Rakuro is left a broken and soreless man. Back in the third city, Rakuro finally meets up with Penciligan and Katso in a place called the Serpent's Apple. Penciligan isn't happy because he is over 3 hours late, but before she can kill him, he calms her down by saying he had a unique event and they brought up Weatherman's name, so he thought it could be useful to their plans. Penciligan is fine with his explanation and will forgive him for being late if he tells them what he learned. Before he sits down, Rakuro jokes about Katso designing his character to look like a girl, but he counters that Rakuro's character looks like a man who's not allowed within 100 meters of a school zone. He doesn't deny that his character looks off-putting and easily recognizable to most people, which is why he has so much trouble moving around in the city, especially now that he is being hunted by Ashura Kai for the unique scenario info. Pensiligan took that into account and chose a diner that was out of the way of any populated areas in the city so Rakuro wouldn't be getting a wanted star level. Back on topic, he tells them of the conversation he had with Vash and that Weatherman is referred to as the Death to Fear and the Death to Fear and a walking corpse. This leads them to believe he is some sort of undead monster. Pensiligan understands a little more about the current situation of Weatherman and it's starting to make some sense. There is something she has to do for now, so she tells the two that she is going to be busy for a while and probably won't be back until that night. Rakuro and Katsuo are fine with that, but they ask what they are supposed to do while she is gone. She opens up her inventory and says the two of them can have a map and a fishing pole so they can go grinding in the iron ruins of Divinity. They are fine with that, however, Rakuro is confused wondering what he is supposed to use a fishing rod to do there, but Pensiligan reassures him that he will know what to do with it once he gets there. As she walks past Rakuro, she notices Emil just chilling out on his neck while pretending to be a scarf and asks Rakuro if he really intends to try to hide her like that. He fully intends to do so, and it's actually pretty effective since Katsuo still has no idea that it's an actual bunny around his neck. If it works, then she can't exactly diss his style, so she leaves Rakuro and Katsuo to do their thing. They prepare to head to Iron Ruins of Divinity, and Rakuro starts looking for a route to take through the back alleys to avoid being spotted by anyone, and Katsuo is annoyed that he's going to have to act stealthy while he's with Rakuro. Emil then makes a sound and Katsuo now finally realizes that it's an actual bunny that's hanging around Rakuro's neck. He picks Emil up and starts squishing her cheeks while she protests, saying he would love to have one of these from a unique scenario. But even though they are friends, Rakuro isn't spilling the beans on how he unlocked the unique scenario. They finally get to the Iron Ruins entrance and Katsuo has been pouting about the unique scenario the whole way there. Rakuro just wants to hurry and grind to level 50 so he can use his awesome swords, so he tells Katsuo to focus as they have important stuff to do. Katsuo says this is the first time he has been in a party since he started playing the game, and this is Rakuro's first time playing with another actual player in the games, so he's sure this is going to be pretty entertaining. Back when they were going over what they know in preparation for the battle against Weatherman, Pensiligan informs them that as soon as the battle begins, all players involved are immediately hit with a level 50 cap, meaning no matter how high your level is, you won't be able to make use of any benefits gotten beyond level 50. This was why Pensiligan said levels didn't really matter as much in this fight. Meanwhile, Weatherman is at level 200, meaning they will be forced to fight an opponent that is 150 levels higher than them, which is why she wanted players who are just that good at the game in order to make up for that level gap. That's great news for Katsuo and Rakuro because it means they don't have to grind too much, but with that being said, they still need to grind to at least level 50 so they can maximize their levels for the fight. And that is why they are here at the Iron Ruins of Divinity. Pensiligan has told them that there is a secret room perfect for grinding here in the ruins, but who knows how long it will take to reach level 50. They head inside the ruins and are amazed by the black panels they find floating all over the place. It looks like an entirely different game at this point, and Rakuro is having flashbacks to all the fun he had in games where moving objects would bug out and create weird mechanics. But Katsuo bursts his bubble, telling him this game is actually well made, unlike the day before, so the chances of these things bugging out is almost zero. On another note, he points out how similar this room is to the final boss stage of a popular game called Galaxy Fighters. However, Rakuro has never heard of it before since it's world famous. He lives and breathes among the trash games, so he wouldn't know anything about a game that is actually meant to be good. Rakuro also takes the time to ask Katsuo what his level is, and upon hearing that he's only level 25, he takes great joy in mocking him for it despite his own level being only 31. Katsuo gets irritated by Rakuro talking down to him, but soon after, a red pyramid comes crashing down as it tries to crush the both of them. Rakuro is surprised to learn that there were enemies among those flying cubes and is about to start the fight, but Katsuo asks him to stay out of this one since he wants to handle it alone. Rakuro obliges and stands with his arms folded as Katsuo gets charged down by the pyramid. Emil thinks they should go help since Katsuo is only 25, but doesn't think he needs to be worried since even with a low level, in Shangri-La you have the skills necessary, you've still got a chance. As the pyramid tried to hit Katsuo, he pulled off a repel counter against it, stopping it in its tracks before using his fists to smash it to pieces in one strike. Rakuro is impressed that Katsuo was able to defeat this thing in one strike, and asks what that red glow around his fists is. It's a buff called Spirit Fists and applies a bonus to his strength and vitality. He set his character to be a monk, so in exchange for not being able to equip weapons, he's able to punch enemies directly with tons of buffs tacked on. He has a heavy lean on health and vitality, so you could say his build is a light fighter. His strategy takes damage received into consideration and has the basic game plan to kill the opponent before he gets killed. Meanwhile, Rakuro is a glass cannon that dumped all of his stats into agility and luck. They take a look at the map Pensillagun gave them and can see that the hidden area she was talking about should be just up ahead, so they continue down the path. The instructions say to walk through the plate that has a hole in it, jump over the crack in the floor, and climb onto the beat-up floating plate. And lastly, after reaching the giant hole in the floor, succumb to the call of the void and jump. The bottom of the hole isn't visible, so they are a little worried that this may have been a plot by Pensillagun to have them both kill themselves. But if that's the case, they make her suffer a far worse fate. They decide to YOLO it, but they don't know what's down there, so they can't exactly have a glass cannon like Rakuro take it on first, so Katsuo volunteers himself to check out the hole first. Imul praises Katsuo for not only being strong, but also being an incredibly brave lady, but Rakuro has to break it to her that though Katsuo may look like a girl, he's a dude on the inside, and that bit of information blew Imul's tiny bunny mind. It's been a while, and Rakuro hears Katsuo saying something from inside the hole, but he can't quite make it out. Still, he doesn't seem to have been assassinated, so it must be safe down there. But as Imul informs him that what Katsuo was saying was that he should stop being such a wimp and get down here already. Hearing this, Rakuro gets angry and throws caution to the wind while leaping down the hole, not knowing exactly what awaited him or if fall damage was enabled. By the time Rakuro had reached the bottom, the steep hole had turned into a child-friendly slide, but Imul was still scared out of her mind. As he disembarks the ride, he finds that they are in the secret room Pensillagun had been talking about. As he reads the instructions, it says they'll find a monster called Lifestyle Lake Serpent, and it apparently gives a ton of experience when you catch it, but Katsuo isn't so convinced that they'll be able to catch a monster like that with nothing but a fishing pole. But they might as well try it since they are here anyway. As they toss their fishing rods into the water, Katsuo suggests that they compete on who can catch the most fish, but Rakuro has already got one on his line. He tries to attribute his success to his years of fishing experience, but it's really just his high luck stat doing all the heavy lifting. He pulls the fish out of the water, but it turns out to be a regular salmon. Yet as Rakuro was ready to go look for another spot to start fishing, Katsuo got a bite on his line, and though it seemed like it was going to be just another salmon, it turns out to be the sea serpent they've been looking for. They get into battle stance, and Rakuro thinks this is a great opportunity to try out his new weapon. Katsuo is confused because from what he remembers, Rakuro's level is too low to use his new weapon. But while that may be true, Rakuro never said he only had one new weapon. He pulls out the Empire B twin blades that he had made by Bilak. Since he couldn't use the weapon that Vash had made for him, Bilak had agreed to make him a weapon and was slaving away over the forge perfecting it. However, once she is done with the weapons and proud of how they turned out, she finally sets down her hammer, but she is miffed to find that Rakuro and Imul were sleeping this entire time while she worked her butt off. She isn't happy with how they are acting just because Vash's forging was more flashy, so Rakuro apologizes and thanks her for the help since without it, he wouldn't have a weapon since his level is too low for the one Vash made. He picks up the Empire B twin blades and inspects them, but then he realizes that he's going to have to maintain a good relationship with Bilak as well as Imul and Vash, and that gives him flashbacks to the horrors of the time he played a dating sim. In the dating sim, he had to juggle romantic interests between 12 different girls, and they all had impossibly difficult love meters to maintain. One wrong move and their love meters would crash like the housing market, and a domino effect would begin where all the girls would fall out of love with him. This would always lead to a bad ending where all 12 of the girls would leave him to travel to Italy and learn the art of pizza making. Think about that for a second. Rakuro's pickle lost to a lump of dough. Even if it was only virtual, the pain is still etched into his heart, but when Imul and Bilak ask what's wrong, he can't really explain it to them, so he changes the topic to how amazing these blades that Bilak made are. They are amazingly crafted as expected of someone with skills as good as Bilak's. Rakuro's glad he decided to go back for the Empire B stingers after he got the quad beetle shell, since it's really coming in handy now. The right blade of the weapons has a special attribute ingrained on it, so it's pretty unique, and it's showing its use as Rakuro uses it against the sea serpent. This fight is pretty tough for Rakuro and Katsuo because their low-level strikes are doing almost no damage at all to the massive monster. In the game, there are certain weapons, skills, and magic that have a so-called corrode attribute attached to it so they can destroy even an avatar's body where that's not the norm. It's an attribute that can destroy body parts and create weak points by applying constant damage to the destroyed section of the body. But his weapon doesn't have a regular corrode attribute. It contaminates the damaged section and destroys it from the inside, and over time, the corrosion will build up in the target's body like poison. And in addition, if you repeatedly strike to apply more corrosion, it will break through the opponent's debug resistance and hasten the effect of the corrosive poison. And that is shown here as Rakuro managed to break through the defense of the serpent and creates a weak point that Katsuo can exploit. Katsuo sees the opening and rushes over, switching out his red buff for a black one and landing a critical hit on the weak spot, followed up by several more strikes to the same spot. It's now that a permanent weakness they can exploit, so the fight is looking to be a lot easier. But as Emil runs out hoping to help, she puts herself right in the line of fire for the monster's tail swipe, and it could very well prove it be fatal for her. But luckily, Katsuo jumps in front of her and takes the blow instead, saving Emil from a grisly death. His character is built to withstand some amount of damage, so he is still perfectly fine. And now that the monster has been greatly weakened, they can all use their combined power to kill it in one final barrage of attacks. As the monster is finally defeating, Katsuo and Rakuro both get massive experience points for their victory, and Katsuo got a new skill as well, so he wonders if he will be able to link it in his skilled garden, and Rakuro just looks at him like, "What did you just say?" He thinks he's just making stuff up, but Katsuo is dead serious and can't believe Rakuro doesn't know about skill linking. It's a core part of the game mechanics and was covered during the tutorial in the first city, but Rakuro never went there, so he had no clue something like that existed, and it's eating away at him. He was also missing out on the grimoires sold there, as well as sub-job and guild information, and he can't take it anymore. The pain of his actions have grown too great, so he chooses to just turn his brain off and go back to farming XP. By the end of their farming endeavors, both Rakuro and Katsuo have hit level 40, and they are making quick progress to their goal. In preparation for the fight against Weatherman, Pensillivan tells them they have to go somewhere since it's the only way to trigger the fight. They need to meet a unique NPC, Setsuna of Days Bygone. The group heads over to the lush forest while Pensillivan explains the process of triggering the fight. On the night of a full moon, among all the glowing moss on the walls of this cave, there is a spot that just stops glowing, and if you carefully examine this spot, then a hidden passage will appear. Rakuro is amazed to see a hidden passage here, as even though he already beat this place already, he had no idea anything like this existed. It's really frustrating, but how is someone supposed to naturally find something like this? Pensillivan just happened to find it because she forgot something and had to come back, so in this game, you'd have to be incredibly lucky to trigger a unique event. Rakuro is rubbing it in Katsuo's face really hard because he's the only one here who hasn't had a unique scenario yet, and it's starting to piss him off big time. But Pensillivan tells them to knock it off because they are almost at the end of the passage. On the other side of the tunnel, they find a field full of blood-red flowers and a clear night sky. Pensillivan always found this place to be incredibly beautiful, but while Katsuo also thinks they are quite pretty, it's rather creepy to have this many spider lilies in one place. As they continue to walk, they hear a voice singing over by the tree, so they head over to check it out and find a girl at the base of the tree. Emil is shocked that she can see through the girl. That's probably part of the intended game design. Pensillivan walks up to Setsuna, saying it has been a month since she last came here and Setsuna is happy to see her again. Rakuro takes a look at Setsuna's design and finds it a bit unusual that her outfit doesn't really fit the whole fantasy theme that this game embodies. It's more akin to something that would be worn in the real world. She might be part of the old civilization from the ruins, and if so, he might be able to find a lead on that unique scenario that he doesn't know how to start. Setsuna asks who the other people Pensillivan brought are, so Rakuro prepares to introduce himself, but Pensillivan interrupts, calling both he and Katsuo idiots, and Emil the mascot. She continues saying that they may be idiots, but they are her trump card to use in battle to give Weatherman the eternal rest he needs. Setsuna's face grows a bit more serious as she tells Pensillivan that she has brought some amazing people with her. She has never seen anyone with such strong marks from Likagan. Plus, he's here with the daughter of Cinderella. Rakuro doesn't know who she is referring to as Cinderella, but Setsuna tells him not to mind her since she is just reminiscing on old memories. But by now, she's probably long dead anyway. Still, Setsuna thanks them for reminding her of her friend as she dearly cherishes those memories. Rakuro is pretty confused by this point, so Pensillivan asks Setsuna to tell Rakuro and Katsuo about Weatherman as well. Setsuna agrees to do so, and this is where the unique scenario truly begins. Rakuro and Katsuo immediately accept the quest, and Setsuna begins to tell them the tale of how all this began. Weatherman is her lover, but after some unfortunate mishaps, she ended up dying, and ever since then, he has continually protected her tomb. Ergo, Weatherman the Tomb Guard. She doesn't know how long it has been since she died, since when she gained consciousness again, she was already in this state. And while she doesn't particularly have any regrets about dying, she is already dead and death is an end. Her life is in the past, and that shouldn't bind anyone's present or future down. She can't bear the fact that Weatherman is giving up his life just to preserve the memory of hers. He used the program she built and set up a barrier around this place, and as she continues to talk, Rakuro notices that the word program doesn't really fit this world's setting. The barrier that was set up uses the energy from the moon to make this place inaccessible by inverting the coordinates of the location and basically sending the area to another dimension so no one could interfere with the final resting place of his beloved. But on the night of the full moon, right as it has lost most of its energy, an opening is created in the barrier and the normally inaccessible space becomes reachable once more. Meaning they need to use that opening to get to Weatherman, and Setsuna asks them to give Weatherman the permanent rest he so desperately needs. Pensiligon promises to help her and put Weatherman down so he can finally rest, while Rakuro and Katsuo are just shocked that she is actually capable of caring for another being. This is the same person who would drag NPCs behind her cart just to attract monsters that we're talking about. The same person who didn't think twice about hanging the princess from a chandelier just to draw out other players, and she is being this nice to an NPC. It looks like miracles do happen, but that doesn't mean she's going to be any nicer to players, as she gets annoyed by their comments and strikes them with her spear. But come on, what did Imul do to deserve that? As they are all sent flying by her initial attack, she continues chasing after them with moderate intent to kill, and Setsuna finds this whole thing funny since she can tell that they are all good friends. After the others have had the fear of God put in them by the level 99 Pensiligon, she finally stops because she can't kill them while they are still preparing for the battle with Weatherman. They are all stuck in the pose of submission and fear of Pensiligon, but behind all her aggression, she's just embarrassed that they saw her act like that. The story of Setsuna hits a little close to home, so she wanted to act a little cool in front of her. It's not strange for her to get immersed in a VR game, but Rakuro never had a problem with that. They are going to be facing a monster that can force a 150 level gap on them. It's going to be tougher than anything they have ever had to face before. Yet even with those insurmountable odds, she is sure that they will be able to beat it with their combined strength. Back in the real world, Rakuro finally wakes up in the morning completely exhausted. After they met Setsuna, he ended up spending the rest of that night grinding his levels, so he got almost no sleep at all. After killing the sea serpent over and over, he got up to level 51, but Katsuo is still at 46. He heads from his room, and we finally get to see some of his family as he greets his mother, who is making breakfast. Edka is an avid insect collector, and she can see that Rakuro is enjoying his summer break, but she is glad that he is at least keeping the promise he made to her. It's not like he had much of a choice, since he doesn't want to have her physically log him out of the game anymore. Rakuro's sister comes into the kitchen and complains that her mother brought another insect in here, but Edka just thinks it's cute. However, Ruby doesn't share that same sentiment and thinks having that thing here will ruin her appetite. As Rakuro walks past his sister, he sees her looking at a magazine photo of a model named Ta Amana, whom he recognizes as Pensiligon. Ruby notices him staring at the photo and asks if he's a fan of Tala. She's a model known worldwide and a really good one at that. So much so that she has gotten the usual famous people stalkers to follow her around and take photos to make groundbreaking articles about her being brave for eating before hitting the red carpet. Though the image Ruby has of her is far different from what Rakuro does, so he tells her she shouldn't be excited over photos that were taken without permission. Ruby can understand what he means because she herself is also a model, and she wouldn't exactly be thrilled by the idea of that kind of thing happening to her. Coincidentally, she has also a photo shoot today, so Rakuro and their dad might have to watch out for paparazzi soon. Speaking of him, Rakuro asks where their father could be, but last time they heard from him, he said he was going fishing. But it looks like he just got back from said fishing trip, and he's brought back quite the impressive prize with him. This is their father, Senji, and he loves fishing more than anything in the world. But now that he's gotten his full of family interactions for the morning, he's back to his hobby and loads up a game. He's got 2 more weeks before they fight Weatherman, so he's going to have to make the best of it to handle what he's got. According to Pensiligon, Weatherman has got high-speed frame attacks, instant death, range, and all kinds of other things. But Rakuro has the perfect place to train to handle things like that, a game with bugs that make attacks insanely fast, Berserk Online. He loads in and finds that the game has been completely deserted by this point. Not a single player in sight, even though this is a Sunday, but as he turns a corner, he spots a player called Dragonfly, and it looks like they've been looking for someone to fight too. Dragonfly is eager to fight with Rakuro, and thanks him for the opportunity to battle a pro, and as the match starts, the newbie wastes no time unleashing his bug spaghetti punch. This attack happens when you pull your hand back after you begin the punch animation and causes twice the damage to be dealt at once. However, Rakuro pulls off a bug of his own and dodges out of the way. Dragonfly seems to have a grasp of the bug basics, but there's far more he doesn't know about, and while Rakuro had intended for this to be training for Weatherman, but since he met Dragonfly, he might as well dunk on the newbie a little. After a couple of rounds, the newbie has unsurprisingly failed to land a single decisive blow on Rakuro, and has suffered defeated time and time again. However, he refuses to give up and wants to go for one more round since he can't end it on a loss. He wants to at least win in once, even if the score is already at 10 wins to none. The match begins and Dragonfly comes running straight into Rakuro, which doesn't seem like a smart play since that didn't work last time. But just as Rakuro was about to take advantage of his short-sighted move, Dragonfly shows that he's a quick learner by using one glitch to sidestep Rakuro and rebound with a heavy attack. That was a decent combo, but he made the mistake of using a regular attack in a bug contest, so he is going to have to deal with the terrible cooldown of the attack. This leaves him wide open to be pummeled by Rakuro. But Dragonfly wasn't out for the count just yet, as he managed to pull off something Rakuro has never seen before. 2 consecutive heavy attacks stacked on top of each other. As Rakuro is analyzing what just happened, he knows he could probably counter this with his rapid punches, but Dragonfly impressed him so much that he decides to just take the hit and let him have the round. This was Dragonfly's first victory, and all the spectators are shocked to see Rakuro losing to a newbie. Rakuro was meant to be training here, but this turned out to be a lot of fun for him. And while he was busy having fun, Katsuo was stuck in the cave, fishing for more experience since he is still only level 47. The next day, Rakuro is back in Shangri-La and is eager to try out that skill tree thing Katsuo was talking about earlier. He asks Emil if he is heading in the right direction to get to the skill garden, but that's something he probably should have asked before he started running at full speed. They get to the skill garden and meet the bunny in charge, who also happens to be Emil's sister, Elk. Rakuro asks Elk if she can help him combine his skills here, and she certainly can, so he opens his skill menu to take a look at what he can do. Since he never learned about this in the tutorial, Rakuro's skills have really started to pile up, so before he goes crazy with his combining, Elk warns him that combining 2 high-level skills won't necessarily create a better skill. So with that in mind, Rakuro makes his skill selection carefully and hands his list over to Elk. After that is done, he takes a look at his stat window, since he should be level 51 after all of his XP grinding. He had to raise his stats so he would be able to equip the Moonlight Blades Vash made for him, so he hasn't had a chance to raise his vitality at all, meaning he is still a very fragile glass cannon. Elk returns from combining the skills for him and hands him a smoothie, which essentially means she just blended the whole tree, and now Rakuro has to drink it all if he wants to get his skills. He starts chugging the tree juice, and when he has done, the skills he had created by combination have all been added to his skill set. He has gotten what he came here for, but before he goes, Elk has one more thing she would like to sell Rakuro. Emil tries to warn him that Elk will rip him off if given the chance, but Elk stops her mid-sentence. In the end, Rakuro buys a grimoire from her and is now flat broke because of it, so he needs to earn some more money before the Weatherman fight. Speaking of the Weatherman fight, Rakuro remembers that he has a meeting with Pensilagon today, so he asks Emil to open a gate so he can get there on time today. At the bar, Pensilagon was sitting and waiting when Katsuo and Rakuro both showed up, so she decided to start the meeting and told them that she has decided on something. The only other people who know how to trigger the Weatherman fight are the Ashura Kai, who use it as a way to gain experience by doing nothing, and that means they may end up clashing when they go to actually challenge Weatherman. That is why Pensilagon came up with the perfect strategy: murder. Thanks to that new game update, the Ashura Kai, who are notorious player killers, have a status effect placed on them, which means when they are killed, the player that killed them gains access to all their item, even the ones in storage. So by going after them, they'll both be getting rid of their competition and possibly gaining access to some really high-level loot. So since Ashura Kai are nothing more than a thorn in her side at this point, why don't they go and kill them all? Pensilagon goes out and starts buying up a bunch of resurrection items in preparation for the fight, also simultaneously creating a market shortage of those items. The new game update came with a bunch of new things added, such as unexplored areas, new jobs, and balance patches. But some things never change, as we see Rei in her room freaking out over a message she wants to, but hasn't sent to Rakuro, due to her chronic shyness when it comes to him. The new game update is the perfect excuse to invite Rakuro to hang out. Plus, he's even online right now, so it's either she does it now or she'll end up losing out on the opportunity to hang out with Rakuro. After building up a lot of courage, she's finally able to send the message out, but even then, the anxiety does not subside because Rakuro still has to respond to it. Soon after she had sent the letter, she receives a letter and thinks it must belong to Rakuro, but there hasn't been enough time for him to have read and responded, so she opens it and finds that it says that the location of the Ashura Kai base has been discovered and a raid is being organized, so her participation would be greatly appreciated. Meanwhile, over in Rabbituza, Rakuro and Emil are enjoying some nice and relaxing tea when Emil breaks the silence to ask Rakuro if it is really time to face Weatherman, and indeed, the time has come, so Emil has something to give him. But before she can tell him what it is, the message bird that Ray sent arrives and is bringing back Rakuro's PTSD from getting pooped on during his trial. Immel tries to help him shake off the bird to protect her status as the animal friend. The bird eventually lands on Rakuro's head and the message Ray sent pops up, making Rakuro realize that the bird is part of the mailing system in the game. He reads the letter, and I'm not going to read the entire thing, but it is the equivalent of a medieval lord asking his associate to hang out. Rakuro is glad that this wasn't a dual letter, but at the same time, he is kind of booked for the entire day since he has that whole Weatherman battle to go through. Therefore, he's going to have to reject her offer, not knowing that this will definitely crush 2 weeks of Ray's hopes and dreams. However, he ended up not needing to reject her because after Ray got called in to be part of the raid on Ashura Kai, she was forced to cancel the play date before he could even accept. Rakuro is obviously fine with it, so he sends an it's alright response and prepares to head into the third city for some last-minute shopping. Just then, he notices that Vash has been standing next to him this entire time, so Rakuro and Immel freak out from surprise. Vash asks if tonight is the night that they take down Weatherman, and Rakuro confirms that to be true. Vash likes the focused look in Rakuro's eyes and once again tells him that he is being trusted to put an end to Weatherman so he can finally rest as he walks off. Now that Vash is gone, Immel brings up the fact that Rakuro told her to stay behind so she doesn't get injured or killed during the Weatherman fight, so she wanted to give him something to aid his efforts since she won't be there in person. She hands him a necklace and explains that it is something Vash brought back for her once and then turned into a necklace, so it is like an amulet of protection for her, so she wants Rakuro to have it. Rakuro lets Immel put the necklace on him, and after it is equipped, we see that it has no effects and no real purpose, but for Rakuro it serves as a reminder of his friendship with Immel. Meanwhile, Pensilogon's about to see her plans come to fruition as she is waiting outside the Ashura Kai base in anticipation of what's to come. The leader is currently waiting for Pensilogon to arrive so they can all go to face Weatherman together, but he hasn't realized she has betrayed them yet, so his guard is still down. His patience runs out and he decides that the clan will just go to get the Weatherman experience without her since she clearly isn't interested in coming, but he is cut off as Ray crashes down and kills one of the clan members. He realizes that they are being raided and dealing with a surprise attack is bad enough already, but it's not just one clan that they have to deal with here. It's all of them. The Ashura clan was hated so much that every clan formed an alliance just to take them down, and with a power gap between them and some of the other top clans, they have absolutely no hope of winning a fight like this. The leader orders the surviving clan members to retreat into the hidden garden so they don't end up being completely slaughtered out here. As he retreats, he can't help but wonder how any of the guilds were able to locate them here in this hidden area since no one outside should have been able to track them down. In the quest area for the Weatherman battle, Rakuro and Katsuo are waiting for Pensilogon to arrive, and while they wait, Rakuro shows off the new waist armor he bought. Now his vitality has gone up all the way from 7 to 22. Now he is less of a glass cannon and more of a slightly reinforced glass cannon. And on another note, Rakuro has never felt more alive after drinking that energy drink that Katsuo suggested to him. It's got him looking like he's on crack and he loves it. Soon after, Pensilogon shows up and tells them the raid on Ashura Kai was successful, and for some reason, Ray seemed to be really pissed at the Ashura clan, making Rakuro remember her having to cancel the invitation because of this. Moving on, the team forms their party and gets ready to begin the battle against Weatherman, but first, Pensilogon has some items she wants to give them. Meanwhile, the surviving members of the Ashura clan are running to get into the Weatherman battleground. While contemplating how their base could have possibly been found out, they think there might have been a spy among their ranks, and the leader is starting to suspect Pensilogon, since she was the only one who didn't show up. But as they get to the entrance of the quest area and find that it has been blocked off because someone is already in there, this settles it for the leader as he now knows for sure that Pensilogon was behind it all and did this just to stop them from getting to Weatherman first. He curses her to hell, and it turns out that she is actually the sister of the leader. Pensilogon asks Rakuro and Katsuo if they are prepared, and they've got nothing holding them back, so they're eager to get this done. They walk up to the tree to begin the battle and are teleported into the battleground graveyard. It is a wide open area with a single cherry blossom tree in the center, where Weatherman sits and guards the tomb of Setsuna. As the notification for the encounter with Weatherman plays, the levels of the three suddenly drop to 50, and Weatherman picks up his sword to begin the fight. First up is Rakuro, so he walks up to Weatherman as he unleashes his first attack, a wind slash. The slash is incredibly powerful, but Rakuro is able to duck under it and get in close to strike Weatherman with a kick. Rakuro then gets pushed back as Weatherman continues to attack at insane speeds with his sword. Pensiligon and Katsuo watch on from the sidelines, and she's impressed by Rakuro being able to get the timing of the attacks down in the first try. Weatherman has Wind Slash as well as a variety of quick draw attacks said to happen within one frame, and they are on the level of instant kills, so you're forced to figure out how to evade or counter the attack on the first try. All this stacked on top of the level reduction makes it seem like Weatherman is not a regular boss, but rather one with a set condition which you must achieve in order to clear the battle. It usually goes something like break a particular item or survive a certain amount of time in the fight. Pensiligon had come to the same conclusion a while ago, so she tried a number of possible conditions and thinks the condition is to survive for a set amount of time. That is why they decided to take turns fighting, as Weatherman's fighting style changes with the more time that passes. First, they need to survive 10 minutes to get past Phase 1, and that is where Rakuro comes in because with his skills he should be able to decipher Weatherman's attack patterns and find a way to effectively damage him. Katsuo is also taking this opportunity to figure out everything he can about Weatherman by watching his movements, so with these two on her side, Pensiligon is sure they can figure out a way to beat him. Rakuro is trying everything in the book against him, but not a single one of his attacks have managed to do any damage to him, and stun attacks don't work either, so Rakuro ends up getting one shot by Weatherman. However, thanks to Pensiligon's spending spree, they have got enough revives to last a while and Rakuro is brought back. Before the fight began, Pensiligon distributed Tear Jewels to the others, which allows a player to revive to full health if used within 10 seconds of death. She also has another kind of revive which can bring a player back up to full health, of which they got 15. So their plan is to use the 27 revives they got to last as long as possible against Weatherman in the fight. So after Rakuro was revived, Katsuo tags in and is now in charge of handling Weatherman while Rakuro regains his bearings, but he isn't as nimble, so dodging takes way more effort from him. Rakuro lasted over 2 minutes against Weatherman before dying, but in those short 2 minutes, the durability of his weapon is already down to half. Since he can't really do any damage to Weatherman, there's no point in wasting his high-level weapon, so he goes for one of his old ones with his durability. Rakuro tags back in and is getting back into the groove of dodging Weatherman's attacks by using his skills. But as Weatherman pulls out a giant cloud hand, no skills could ever have prepared him for this. He is knocked away and has his health drained to 0, but before he dies for good, Katsuo uses another revive on him and tags in to give him some rest time. However, he still lacks the dodging skills Rakuro possesses, so he gets killed almost immediately and Pensiligon is forced to revive him. Afterwards, Rakuro charges back in, but he gets killed as well, and it goes on like this for a while until 10 minutes eventually pass and Weatherman stops moving. Phase 2 of the fight has begun, and that means Weatherman is going to summon his horse, Karen, to aid him in battle. Katsuo is put in charge of handling Karen since they can't let him combine with Weatherman no matter what they do. If they manage to combine, Weatherman will become basically unstoppable and the plan will be ruined, so to prevent that from happening, he needs to get on his back and stay on while it tries to buck him off. It's easier said than done considering he has never had any experience being a cowboy before, but he did once play a horse riding game, so that should be good enough. While still trying to dodge Karen's onslaught of attacks, Katsuo thinks to himself that the game devs must have made it at least slightly possible to pull off, so there should be a way for him to get on Karen, and he soon finds it as he spots a ladder attached to its back and uses it to mount while pulling out a whip to hold himself on. While he deals with that, Pensiligon is standing off to the side and does some quick calculations to realize that at this rate, they won't be able to make it to the time limit before they run out of revive items. So it is time to use the item she has been saving for this occasion, the Scales of Rewards. This is a unique item owned by the NPC guild named Golden Scales, and it has the power to provide amazing rewards when the user sacrifices something, so Pensiligon dipped into her almost endless bank account once more to get them to lend her the scales. And with it, she is going to sacrifice every bit of loot she has ever acquired, totaling in at 30 million money. With this, she is able to pick the perk of temporarily giving others additional stat points amounting to 300, so she starts off by giving 50 extra points to Katsuo and Rakuro, who were struggling badly. Rakuro can feel the effects of the stat boost and finds that his stamina and luck have both been increased. So with this new buff, knowing he can't damage Weatherman with his weapon, he goes for the hands. He still won't be able to damage Weatherman, but he can at least rely on an attack that is based on luck, so he strikes Weatherman's sword and manages to knock it away. He then plays a very dangerous game of keep away to prevent Weatherman from being able to use most of his sword-related instant death attacks, but in the process, he accidentally causes Pensiligon to fall into the line of fire. Rakuro draws Weatherman's attention away by striking him on the back of the head with his own sword. The attack does no damage, but it did manage to redirect Weatherman's aggression back at Rakuro, But that also means Rakuro gets his throat grabbed and body slammed into the ground, killing him instantly. And now, Weatherman is stood between him and Pencil again, so she can't use the revived stone in time. As Weatherman begins his Cloud Fist attack, Pencilligan takes a chance and charges towards him because she knows the first won't hit her if she manages to get behind him in time. She manages to survive and revive Rakuro as well, so he resumes fighting Weatherman, choosing not to steal his weapon again because of what happened earlier. Meanwhile, Katsuo figured out a way to keep himself from being bucked off and tied himself to the horse, which works. I guess. The timer counts down to 0 and the phase ends as Weatherman drops to his knees, but the boss music hasn't stopped playing yet. Pencilligan knows what's about to come as the last time she fought Weatherman. At this phase, he unleashed a devastating howl that instantly killed everyone on the field. She has a plan to counter it though, and it involves this holy water. She had always thought Weatherman was a cyborg or something, but now that she knows he is an undead, the strongest holy water money can buy us their best option. Weatherman screams out in pain, but is not the insta-kill attack Pencilligan was talking about, so it looks like the holy water did the trick. But Weatherman gets back up and is looking more fierce than ever before. The third phase has officially begun, and the horse begins to transform into a mecha, which Pencilligan has never seen before, but one thing is certain. It will be bad if that thing managed to combine with Weatherman, so they need to stop it. However, that is easier said than done as the mecha is still a huge problem to deal with. Rakuro tells Pencilligan to go help Katsuo deal with the mech while he takes on Weatherman. So far, the battles have been about surviving for a set amount of time, so he guarantees her that he can survive for 10 minutes against him. Putting her faith in Rakuro, she leaves Weatherman up to him but reminds him not to get too reckless with his fighting because she won't be available to revive him in time. However, in his head, Rakuro apologizes to her because he just heard what she said and is about to ignore every word of it. Fighting a boss battle just to survive for 30 minutes straight isn't fun, and he has been thinking ever since he saw the cracks form on Weatherman. So with this new knowledge, Rakuro equips his strongest set of gear to finally have a real fight with Weatherman. He practiced parrying attacks with his helmet in order to keep his hands free for a counterattack, but even after landing a critical hit, Weatherman isn't fazed by it. Rakuro isn't pulling any punches, so he uses all the skills he learned in preparation for this fight until he successfully lands a drill-pierce combo attack that deals several critical hits to Weatherman. This seems to have phased him, and Rakuro is cackling like a madman over bringing Weatherman to his knees. The others find the cackling a bit weird, but so long as he's handling Weatherman, it should be fine. For them to keep their chances of winning, they need to keep the mech at bay. Katsuo already tried punching it a couple of times, and it seems like the mech will take damage, but is still tough as hell to fight. Pencilligan is content with just running away until they win, but Katsuo wants to go for the kill and attacks it with his whip. Unfortunately, he now regrets his actions as he is killed moments later. Pencilligan revives him again and leaves an item for him to use called Evil Force. She says is a special grade item that can raise his stats to those of a level 99 player, but it comes with a major penalty. Katsuo, on the other hand, doesn't really care and takes it before he can be told of the side effects. After taking it, his vision turns black and white and his hearing turns fuzzy, but that isn't the bad part of the side effects. Every 30 seconds, he will lose 1 level, so by the time the 15-minute effect period is over, he would have dropped back down to level 20. Plus, it's made of something absolutely disgusting. Regardless, he has already eaten it, so if he's going to lose his levels, he might as well take out his frustration on the mech. He strikes it in the knee, and with his boosted stats, he finally manages to knock it down, and Pencilligan takes the opportunity to stab its knee and possibly shatter it. Unfortunately, the mech countered with its laser cannon and ends up blowing her arm off. The center of the robot seems to be its weakest point, but they still need to find a way to get in there. Meanwhile, Rakuro is still locked in combat with Weatherman, and is getting the hang of his new meta. He has a skill that raises his stats when his health is below 1/3 and another that boosts his stamina and vitality depending on his hunger. But just as he is about to head back into battle with his buffs, Weatherman notices the necklace Emil gave him before he came here and stops attacking altogether. He starts talking about the necklace being a fragment of Alice, but Rakuro doesn't get most of what he is saying, and Weatherman neglects to clarify, but he isn't going to let Rakuro win without a challenge, so the two get back to fighting. However, this time, Weatherman is able to use his attacks in quick succession, and with no indication between attacks, making Rakuro's job of dodging much more difficult. He is still able to keep ahead of the attacks, but they were all decoys used in order to get him in position for Weatherman to use his ultimate attack. Clear Sky Conquest. Rakuro's feet are glued to the floor, so there will be no dodging this time around, and his only option is to take it head-on with his helmet parry. But it is a named attack with a whole speech before it is delivered, so I don't think a helmet is going to do much to stop it. It seems Rakuro has been slain, so Katsuo is going to attempt to throw a revive at him, but it looks like Rakuro already took care of it himself. Back in Rabituza, Emil is worried sick for Rakuro since he hasn't come back yet from fighting Weatherman. We see that before Rakuro got caught in Weatherman's attack, he threw one of those revive orbs up into the air in preparation for his likely demise and tried to parry the attack. His helmet couldn't hold up, so after the strike connected and he had his body cleaved in two, Weatherman began to walk away in victory, believing Rakuro to be dead. However, the orb he threw into the air lands on his dying body and he is revived back to full health. It was a risky move, but he managed to survive in the end. On the other hand, his equipment wasn't so lucky as his helmet is half destroyed and his sash was completely obliterated by the attack. Weatherman realizes that Rakuro is still alive and well for now, but that doesn't matter much since Weatherman can just keep spamming his ultimate move over and over until Rakuro eventually dies. He resumes the constant zero cooldown attacks, and Rakuro now realizes that the chain attacks are a part of the Clear Sky Conquest attack, but even if he knows that now, he still has to figure out a way to counter it somehow. And considering all the moves Weatherman has access to, the ideal strategy would be to conserve stamina and maintain social distancing from Weatherman at all times. If he can manage to do that, then surviving should be too hard, but he couldn't stop Weatherman from binding his leg to the ground, so now that he is stuck again, his only shot is to use the self-revive method again. Weatherman uses his ultimate technique again, and Rakuro is sure this technique was designed to be an inescapable death sentence. He gets sliced up again, but the revive he prepared is on its way, so moments later it hits him and the revival takes place. Rakuro gets back up to his feet and creates distance between him and Weatherman to catch his breath. Even if he were level 99 and had the best equipment in the game, he is sure Weatherman's attacks would still easily pierce through them like it were nothing. Weatherman reiterates that until Rakuro is able to beat his ultimate move, he shall not fall. Weatherman continues to use his Clear Sky Conquest move, and the worst part is how he keeps your feet trapped so you can't dodge the strike. And once your feet are rooted in the ground, you have no choice but to eat the strike and die. Rakuro meets that same fate, but manages to throw a revived crystal in the air again to get himself back up. After he gets revived, Rakuro checks his inventory and realizes that he is out of revival orbs and only has 5 other revival crystals to use in this fight. So if Weatherman is guaranteed to kill him every 30 seconds because of his special attack, then Rakuro has around 3 minutes to live. That isn't going to be enough to make it to the 10-minute mark he was aiming for. Surviving 10 minutes was only a theory in the first place, but now Rakuro is thinking the clear condition may be centered around surpassing Weatherman's attack. And the key to doing that has got to be parrying it somehow, but it's not going to be easy to pull off. He's got a plan to achieve this, but it will take a bit of time to get himself ready. Sometime in a few more revivals later, Rakuro has just used his last crystal and has no more revives, but that's fine because his preparations are finally complete. Weatherman begins his Clear Sky chain attack once more, so once the time comes for the final strike, Rakuro gets ready to counter. He combines the twin moon swords he got from Vash and reveals the special effects they possess. If your stats are lower than your opponent's stats by a wide margin, the power of the weapon rises in proportion. This gives him the best chance of successfully parrying his attack as long as he uses it in tandem with his low health boost ability. Unfortunately, as he tries to activate it, he finds out that his health is too high, so he screwed himself over. Without the low health boost, he won't be able to time the parry right, and he is out of revivals, so this may be where the battle ends for him. However, before he can be cleaved once more, Pensilagon and Katsuo, who are done with their battle, throw a dagger at Weatherman to distract him with Setsuna's grave. And this buys Rakuro enough time to stab himself through the heart as a last-ditch effort. In the new game update, there is a patch for characters with high luck which makes it possible to survive self-inflicted wounds at 1 HP. So as Rakuro drains his health down to 1, he is able to activate his boost skill and now has a good chance at victory. Weatherman brings his sword down, the two have a clash of full-power ultimate moves. But as the dust settles, the one who loses grip of their weapon is Weatherman, meaning Rakuro has finally won. Weatherman's ultimate strike has been bested, and he has nothing but praise for Rakuro as he did it all with his own power. He walks over to his sword and picks it up, which puts Rakuro on edge, but instead of attacking, he points the sword at him and reiterates that he believes Rakuro possesses great talent as a descendant of the first pioneer. He walks past Rakuro and the others, and straight to the grave of his beloved Setsuna, where he plants his sword into the ground and disintegrates. Weatherman is gone now, but they still haven't met the clear conditions for the quest. However, moments later, the arena begins to disappear, turning to the flower field where Pensilagon first met Setsuna. Setsuna thanks them for helping her make her last wish, or rather the wish of Setsuna come true, And the reason she says it like that is because she is not exactly the real Setsuna. While she is indeed Setsuna, she is not the same one that died ages ago. Rather, she is a shadow created from the final wish of Setsuna before she died. If Weatherman ever becomes too obsessed with her passing to let himself live, someone should please let him die. Before she fades away, she leaves them with the clue that if they wish to find out the truth about this world, then they should seek out something called Bahamut. None of them have any clue what Bahamut is meant to be, so Pensilogan asks if she can explain more about it. However, she has said all she is willing to say. If they want more answers, they'll have to find it themselves. She then turns into dust and disappears. They receive the message window showing that they've successfully defeated Weatherman, so they are about to check out what kind of amazing loot they must have gotten from the battle, but they are caught off guard as a bell begins to ring throughout all of the game. It is an announcement declaring that the first unique monster has been successfully slain by them. It calls the three of them out by name and says with this achievement, the world story of Shangri-La will be progressed. Everyone in the game is in a frenzy due to this recent development, especially the leader of Ray's clan. She can't believe they were beaten to the punch in defeating a unique monster, but seeing the names of the people who achieved it, she realizes Pensilogan gave them information about Ashura Kai, just so they would be a distraction while she fought Weatherman. She has never heard of Katsuo before, but she recognizes Rakuro as the same one who fought Lekagan. Meanwhile, Ray was worrying whether Rakuro and Pensilogan happen to be close since she can't handle competition, why she suddenly receives an alert and ends up disappearing from the meeting early. Meanwhile, Rakuro and the others run into the last of the Ashura Kai members and Pensilogan starts making fun of her brother for losing everything he gained. He is upset and threatens to kill them on the spot since they must be weakened from defeating Weatherman. However, they had a plan ready for such an emergency, so Rakuro summoned Ray to save them. He apologizes for bothering her, but she's actually really happy she gets to talk to him again. 50 seconds later, the last of the Ashura Kai members are killed and the loot they've gotten from them is pretty decent. Rakuro thanks Ray for showing up to help him, but he doesn't really know what to say now since he can't just ask her to leave after he brought her here. Since she is here anyway, Pensilogan asks to be killed at the hands of the Attack Master. She's been killing players a lot, so the penalty has been stacking up pretty high, so even if she loses all her stuff, she just wants to wipe her slate clean. And what better way to do it than to have an all-out battle with the Attack Master? Ray agrees to the duel and pulls out her unique weapon while equipping her strongest buffs, and Pensilogan does the same, so they both get into battle stance, and as they begin, Pensilogan lunges to throw the first strike. Ray blocks it and counters with a strike of her own, which would have been a one-hit kill. However, it only managed to cut Pensilogan's arm off, so she's able to run up behind her and grab her severed arm to strike again. Ray's impressed by the tenacity Pensilogan is showing, so she's going to honor her by using the most powerful move she has in her arsenal. She begins the speech for the strike, and if we've learned anything from Weatherman, if the strike has a whole speech before it is performed, then it is going to be devastating. Pensilogan tries to interrupt the chant, but she gets blown back by shockwaves coming from the sword, and is subsequently hit with the Chaos Void Strike. As expected, once the dust settles, Ray is still standing unharmed, and all that is left of Pensilogan is the assortment of her items scattered all over the ground since she has been vaporized. Moments later, the gamer instincts of Rakuro and Katsuo kick in, so they begin frantically looting as much stuff as they can since it is all high-level stuff, and Ray joins in since she doesn't want to be left out of the loot shares. However, once they have thoroughly looted the area, they end up transferring ownership of all the items to Ray since she was the one who killed Pensilogan, and as such, she has a right to keep any items that she dropped. Ray thanks them for giving her the items, but now that all that is done, they realize there is literally nothing to talk about anymore. Pensilogan was the one who was handling conversation for them up till now, but with her dead, neither of them have any idea where to start when talking to Ray. Katsuo tells him he has to do something here since he's the one who's friends with Ray, but it's not like he has ever had a real conversation with her in the game, so he doesn't really know how to handle talking to her. With all the silence, Ray finally builds up the courage to ask Rakuro a question. She wants to know what kind of relationship he has with Pensilogan, but she's fidgeting around because she is so nervous. Rakuro answers that she is just a gaming buddy of his, so Ray is relieved since that means she still has a chance with him. The timer on the summoning is about to expire, so she's about to be returned to where she came from. Before she goes, Rakuro thanks her again for coming to save him and promises to return the favor later, so she requests that they play together sometime and then disappears. Now that she's gone, Rakuro and Katsuo prepare to leave as well, but notice a sword that had been left behind. It's the same one Pensilogan was using, but they thought it was too creepy to loot, so they left it there. But on second thought, it's too good of an item to let go to waste, so Rakuro hangs onto it. Rakuro returns to his room, where Emul is awaiting his return while buried under his pillow. He calls out to her, saying he is perfectly fine and managed to beat Weatherman. But with that aside, Emil still leaps on him with force that really shouldn't be possible to generate as a bunny. She knocks him down and cries on his chest, telling him how amazing he is for making it back alive. In the real world, we get to see the head of the PR division of Utopia, Sasaki Tsukuyoji, and he's been called in because of the defeat of Weatherman. They had predicted the order of defeating the unique monsters to start with the easiest one, with Weatherman being towards the last in terms of difficulty. He asks if Tsukiri is down below, and his assistant confirms that she hasn't left for weeks now as usual, but you should know that Amachi was also headed in that direction. Tsukuyoji knows what that means, and while it may be difficult, he remains stoic and says this is just part of the job. He walks into the elevator and pulls out a bottle of stomach medication, but it is empty, and his somber demeanor cracks. He asks his assistant if he happens to have stomach medication on hand, but that's not something he just carries on him. Tsukuyoji understands and accepts his fate as he is basically heading into the gulag without a gun. We get a look at Amachi, the executive producer of Shangri-La who was mentioned earlier, and it is clear why Tsukuyoji was being cautious as she is angrily stomping towards Tsukiri's office, but has to scan her ID card, input her password, then scan her fingerprints, and finally scanning her eyes just to be allowed access to the room to speak to Tsukiri, the world creative administrator. She is livid and states that Weatherman was just defeated, but she was under the impression that Tsukiri was sure it would take at least 10 years before anyone could actually defeat him. Tsukiri corrects her as she had only stated that there was no way a group like Ashura Kai could do it, but she never expected that the 3 players who did it would manage to get their hands on the reward scales he used in the fight. Still, she made sure to check thoroughly, and she is certain that the players didn't cheat or use any bugs, so they can't complain about their victory, as it was the result of the intended game design. However, Tsukiri is going to complain regardless. She blames Amachi for nerfing Weatherman so he could be beaten by countering his slash, but she only did that because the stats Tsukiri gave him were utterly unbeatable. The two begin arguing and trying to claw each other's faces out. Meanwhile, Tsukuyoji has just arrived in the gulag. All the conflict here is making his stomach hurt, which is why he needs the medicine, but he still tries to break up the fight between the two nonetheless. However, these two are the equivalent of toddlers right now. Simply telling them to stop doesn't work, and they know his weakness, so they knock him out with a critical hit for trying to be reasonable. While the game devs are at each other's throats over the defeat of Weatherman, Rakuro, who is the one behind it, is taking a well-deserved nap. And elsewhere, Rei is in her bed, unable to sleep since she is so happy about all the Rakuro progress she made today. He called on her for help in his time of need, and at this rate, she may get close enough to him to be able to talk in real life. The next day, Rakuro wakes up and takes the keep-out note off his door since he is done with his important battle, and after scarfing down a burger, he heads right back into his room so he can take a look at the amazing loot he must have gotten. He logs back into Shangri-La, but finds Emil there waiting for him because she says Vash wants to see him. Rakuro heads to Rabbituza to meet Vash, and he wants to ask a few questions about his fight with Weatherman. Rakuro states that Weatherman was truly a powerful opponent, but when he was defeated, he said it was a job well done. So Vash isn't satisfied with the outcome. Considering Rakuro's achievements, Vash asks him if he would like to learn the truth of this world, and Rakuro is obviously greatly enthused to learn more about the world, but there is something he needs to do first. Vash asks him to go gather some items for him, and once he has done that, he'll be informed of the secrets of this world. Rakuro is annoyed that he doesn't get to kick off his special bonus scenario right away, but it turned into a fetch quest. He's fine with it since that's how these kinds of things usually start anyway, but when he checks the list of items needed, a transmitter, a positioner, and a receiver, he has no clue where to begin looking. He asks Vash to give him something to work with here since he can't expect to just send him out to find something with no context, so Vash explains that he'll find it if he goes looking in the Lightless Barrens. Rakuro has never heard of such a place, and it isn't displayed on his map either, so he assumes it isn't anywhere near the third city. Vash tells him he'll never find the Lightless Barrens on such a small map, so he decides to go see Pete's after this to find a better map. Vash has said all he wishes to say, so he tells Rakuro that he will be patiently awaiting his return with the items, but Rakuro could really use some extra clues to help him find the items, but Vash isn't giving him any new information. The Lightless Barrens may be a place he is meant to go to way later in the game considering how unique scenarios are meant to be late-game content. Emil tells him he has a long road ahead of him, but that's where she is wrong since thanks to this fight with Weatherman, Rakuro's level has gone through the roof. He also got a bunch of new skills, so he'll need to head back to the skill garden at some point. A power boost like this will let him scare through the story easily, but that's not all he got either as there is still the battle loot. There's no way they would have him do all that work and not give him something good for his efforts, so he takes a look in his inventory and finds that the first thing he pulls out is a book detailing the entire life of Weatherman and the way he lived his life. That's great and all, but Rakuro wants to get to the good stuff, so he moves on to the next piece of loot and receives an item called the Clear Sky Skill Book. It takes him a while to register what just happened, but this means as long as he can get a suitable weapon of divinity, he can learn the Clear Sky technique that Weatherman used against him, and he is really happy about it. It may take a while for him to acquire an adequate weapon, but it will be worth it for such a powerful attack. That was a great one, but there is still one more item to inspect, so Rakuro takes a look and finds that the last piece of loot is an accessory called the Inventoria Bracelet. It acts as both the door and key to a storage space, so Rakuro can store items in there, so even if he is killed by another player, they won't be able to steal the things he stored in there. When warm, it fuses with the wearer and becomes part of their body, so it is basically a portable infinite storage house. He tries on the bracelet and transports himself into the storage space to see what he has to work with, but I'm sure he wasn't expecting to find a fully stocked armory of high-level items waiting for him. This is way better than anything he could have hoped for, and he doesn't know how to react. Pensilivin returns to the flower field to visit the grave of Setsuna. She was greatly invested in her story because it was a parallel to her life, so helping Setsuna achieve her goals gave her a lot of satisfaction. She recalls the last words Setsuna left them with about seeking the Bahamut if they wished to find the truth of this world. So while she had initially planned to give up on playing Shangri-La after beating Weatherman, she'll set a new goal of finding this Bahamut and making it spill all the secrets it has. This was the end of episode 20. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to not miss the next part.